Brad Smith, good to see you, buddy. Glad to have you in the studio. How's it going?
It's great, man.
Yeah,
good to finally be here.
We were just chomping the bit for the mic to turn on the podcast to start. We were already talking about a lot of good real estate stuff. Brad actually, I don't know how we even got connected. How we get connected?
96 East.
Well, but was it just straight up? I called it. That's how we got connected. We didn't know each other before then, huh?
Yeah, no, maybe. Yeah,
no, it was right in. Jump in.
Yeah, it is. So
what was that property?
So it was 96 East in Janesville. I had joined a team, my first brokerage job, with my previous partners, but my partners at the time, and they had that listing.
Yep.
And I came in when I think it was already under contract with you, and they sent me to the site to do due diligence with you.
So who gave me the first initial tour? You didn't?
I think it was Jason.
Did he?
Yeah.
See, I don't remember that at all.
Yeah.
I don't remember that at all.
Well, we did, yeah.
Did
I wouldn't
you?
have done the initial tour.
No?
I would have done the due diligence with you.
So when we sold. A lot of you guys that have followed my real estate journey have heard about the storage units. We sold the storage units, and when that went under contract, that's when I was like just hustling to try to find something to 1031 money into.
Yeah.
So I was like calling. I was off market, on market, whatever, and then that was Cushman, right? When you're saw it on the Cushman website, picked up the phone. I got a tour probably within the first week, got the information. I'm like, man, this seems like a deal that we could 1031 our money into. And the nice thing was it was 3 blocks away from our office there in Janesville.
Yeah, yeah. And you said that you had been driving by that property.
Oh, yeah. For probably at that point, because we bought that in 2019. So, yeah. And I lived in those other apartments that Hovde owns down there in Janesville at that point. Yeah. So I lived there for like 2 or 3 years. And even before then, I'd drive past that to go to the dentist.
Okay.
So I'd always drive by that property, and so
I was refreshing with your book here recently, and it had been on the market for a while. When you found it,
yeah.
And so were you just because you're in a 1031, you weren't previously on the Cushman site?
For some reason, I don't know.
You came across it?
No, I check all the sites. I've always checked all the sites. I always get the updates. I don't know how I missed it. But it was me. It was because I was scraping those websites again, going to them. I didn't get a notification from anybody, I don't think. And so I found it and got it locked up. And it's crazy how there's a lot of local people in Janesville that didn't actually know it was for sale either.
Right.
It's a little bit big for just unit count and just for management and price. I mean, we got a good per door price on it, but it's still like you get to the $4 or $5 million transactions and not just it's. Sometimes the local brokers or the local buyers, they're not necessarily looking for something that big. But
it's interesting from my perspective. So was at Cushman at the time, went over to Walker and Dunlop to do the same thing, investment sales, and now back at Cushman.
Yep.
But with some of these larger companies, CBRE, Walker and Dunlop, JLL, and obviously Cushman, some other ones, we don't always have in our database the more local buyers like yourself.
Yeah.
And I'd say most of those national firms really focus on 100+ unit deals because if we're a national firm, we can attract national capital.
Yep.
And they want scale of 100+ units typically.
Yep.
So it was a really interesting,
And it was just under 100, 96 units. So it's kind of that tweener. But then the pricing of it was, we got it for what, 48 grand a door, or 47,
which sounds insane now.
It's $4.75 million, I think, for 96 units.
Yeah. Yeah. So you were kind of in that perfect, it's a little bit of an arbitrage opportunity because if it was on the market for a while, the right people like yourself weren't seeing it. Right. That's an interesting arbitrage opportunity for people applying in that 40 to 100 unit space.
Yep. But we would have wrapped that up. We would have got that under contract right around probably must have been like I don't know. We was probably starting to negotiate maybe January, February then maybe. And because when we closed, it was like May 31, I think, or June 1st of 2019, because it was CJ's first day, the day that we closed.
Oh, that's right.
Our COO, our new CEO at the time.
Yeah, because I started in March.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
But that was the days, it was just you and I that you went to the due diligence when we inspected apartments, and it was just me at that point. Now I've got a team. I don't even necessarily. We have a team of 8 people. So now when we go buy a 250 unit or we do due diligence on a portfolio that's in one little area of 400, 500 units. It takes us half day. It took me all day because it was 96 units. Me going to every unit and just kind of using my system that I had then, which was jotting down some notes in each unit.
It was pretty simplified. I remember.
Yeah, we were just in it. Yeah.
Well, that was funny because I was just sent up there, by my senior guys at the time, and they're like, "Yeah, just go meet, the client and go walk through." And I didn't know what to expect or what to do or whatever, right? So we get there, and typically what you would do is you would meet with the property manager, and they would knock on every door, and hey, we got to do an inspection or whatever, and they know everybody, so it's kind of a warm introduction. Well, I didn't know what to do, and the property manager was kind of a local long-term manager. So she's like, she's asking me, what do we do? I was like, just give us a set of keys, And so you and I went through knocking on everybody's door, and I used to be a 55 plus community, right?
Yeah.
So a little bit older of a clientele. And I mean, we had some awkward run-ins.
Yeah, really awkward run-ins.
I mean, one guy answered the door pretty much naked.
Yep.
And then he shut it on us, and he goes, a lot of us have shotguns back here, right?
I forgot
basically
about that.
Threatened to shoot us. And then, so that was a lot of fun. I definitely learned from that.
Yep.
Next time, bring the manager, which we did do when we did Springdale.
Yep, Springdale. Yep.
So yeah,
on 6 points, we bought a few deals through you.
Yeah. So
3 deals now, I think, right? Yeah, those 3.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were just kind of talking. I mean, Brad was asking. You were kind of just saying, what was that turnover kind of like? And is it still, kind of a lot of old people? And like, the crazy thing is, like, people don't think about this, but like when you manage enough apartments, you have deaths in your apartments, and it happens pretty regularly. And in that property, like, unfortunately, like we've like, because it was a senior housing place, we didn't operate as senior housing. We were more market rate, but we still let seniors live there while we operated. But a lot of the seniors ended up moving out by death. Like that was the way the unit turned over. I would guess, man, out of those 96 units, I would guess we've probably had like 10 deaths.
Wow.
From older,
just from age, 85, over the course of, 5-6 years, and that's 10% of your population there. So that's not normal.
No. So, so it's been a little bit different, a lot for our team to, manage and stuff, just because like how you have to handle with the family and all that kind of. It's not a normal move out, right? So
yeah.
But yeah, we bought that property 2019 for 4.75 ish. We just had a transaction right around $9 million on it. We still operate and control it. I actually sold another property, so this is kind of where I said, well, let's save this for the podcast before we were talking. So I'd actually sold, Broadway Square that we owned in Madison, 42 units.
Yeah.
It was a 32-unit building plus another 10 units behind there. Sold that and actually ended up identifying 96 East as my 1031 exchange because I owned a small enough percent of, like, through Badger Store, and just how it was set up, I owned a small enough percentage where I could come in and basically replace myself and be able to 1031 in, right? Okay. So I 1031 money in, plus I put some more capital in. But then what happens is, I had previously 1031 funds forward into 96 East when we sold Badger Storage. So I kept that 10. So once that transaction happened, right, then I take my Badger Storage entity 1031 funds that, from the 96 East and the 96 unit, and that's how that went to a 48 unit that we just bought in.
Okay, got it. Yeah, so that you
in Watertown in October.
You ticked into 96 East, and then you just ticked out of it into a new deal.
Yep. So gotcha. And then the rest of the investors in 96 East, there was a couple of them that just kind of cashed out, walked away. Yeah. And then there was some of them that cashed out and basically re-upped and put more money back into that deal. Plus, there's a couple investors there was one other investor I let into the 48 unit and whatnot. But so it's kind of funny how, and that's what we're trying to do, is trying to maximize value everywhere. And I still view 96 East, like we were kind of talking, the reason I was still willing to put money in. So as a GP, I wanted some type of transaction to happen so I could recognize I had a lot of equity tied up for the performance of 96 East. I have just sitting there not working for me. So I'm like, I want to find a way to unlock some of that. Yeah. But I also wouldn't mind keeping that asset and even investing more in that asset, because I still think we can take it from $9 million to being between $13 and $14 million by doing our CapEx. And so that's what we're going to do now. And so what we've done with the 96 unit is we've got about $2.5–3 million set aside. We're going through and doing every single unit, upgrading flooring, all new cabinets, adding in-unit washer dryer, all new windows. So really increasing the NOI, because the previous business plan, when we bought it, when you were part of that transaction, that you were you guys were the brokers on, that business plan was just basically those rents were so low
Yeah.
that we knew no matter what we could.
They've almost doubled since then.
Yeah, I mean, we knew no matter what we could add $100 to $200 per unit and not even have to really do anything to the units just because like of how affordable it is. So the property's like really rough.
Yeah.
It was running to the ground before we started this phase of the CapEx.
It's interesting though because I think that speaks a lot to your market knowledge back in 2019 when you bought it.
Yeah.
And that was probably why it was a little hard to sell it to kind of our national buyer pool at the time.
Yeah.
Is people couldn't get, they didn't understand Janesville. They didn't understand, hey, you could come in and push it 100, 150 without doing anything.
It's the benefit. That's also the benefit for anyone listening all across the country to find like tertiary markets that are around a secondary or, even a primary market, like just, an hour and a half outside, 2 hours, 3 hours away. We're 2 hours away from Chicago, right?
Yeah.
And so like just there's still population in Janesville, right?
Yeah.
And the surrounding area a lot because you're between Chicago, Milwaukee, Madison. So for people out there trying to find those deals, those are the best. Like anyone that's in my multifamily wealth accelerator or come to my mastermind, I'm like, you guys, we shouldn't be looking in Fifth Avenue, New York City. No. Like 99.99% of us, right? We shouldn't be looking like downtown Chicago. We shouldn't be looking in some of these places. Now, but here's the thing is like you go a half hour, 20 minutes, half hour, depending on the city, hour and a half outside of those cities, you got like a gold mine because it's still so, like multifamily real estate is so fragmented.
Very much so,
because of how many, and it will be fragmented for a long time, no matter how much money comes into the space, just because of how many units there are.
Right. And it's funny when you think about it historically, like it's way less fragmented than it used to be.
Right.
I think some people are like, oh my God, you got these mega firms with 50, 60,000 units, right?
But how many total apartment units are in the country?
Oh my God. I don't know off the top of my head, but it's amazing what you can see what can get done. So like Tony Robbins,
like the largest has what, 120,000 units? I
can like name a few, like Monarch. Investment management. I think they have like 70 plus.
70 plus.
Widener, I think, is 50,000.
And we're talking like top 10, top 20.
Yeah, that's
right?
top 20 accounts. Yeah, so they all have 40,000
But the crazy thing
plus.
is there's millions and millions and millions of units, and they only have how much of a market share, right?
Well,
if you go look like fast food or whatever, like the people that have the biggest market share have a much more significant percentage of the market share in those than they do.
Yeah,
right?
It's a really good way to look at it, right? Like if you think about fast food, it's like, I don't know, it's McDonald's like 30% of the restaurant, fast food.
It's much more than less than 1%, right?
Absolutely.
The biggest players own significantly less than 1% of the entire, and that's how you know.
But I think if you tie that back to your tertiary market play, it's way more fragmented in the tertiary markets.
Yeah, for sure.
So doing something like you're doing, I think, is probably one of your biggest advantages. Is you're going to these private folks who are like, hey, I got, Fund 3 is a great example, right? I got 218 units. And I've had them for 30 years, and I'm ready to move on. The bigger national players wouldn't have been competing for that,
right?
Because it's scattered, and it's,
And Brad knows my portfolio a little bit, so he says Fund 3, and it's the portfolio where we bought a 76 unit townhome site, a 78 unit townhome site, and then there was a scattered portfolio of duplexes that we picked up, and that he's saying that no other institutional player is going to come in and make that transaction because the seller wanted to sell all of it in one check.
Right.
Just one transaction and be done. He didn't want to break any of it up.
Right.
So and then how we've turned
around.
Done
a lot of that now. You've done a handful of transactions like that.
Yeah, the portfolio and multiple properties and I think actually some of those are some of our best deals because, like the deals where we have gone a little sideways or not hit our numbers, which there's two of them, and when you look at that, it was just if it was just all one big portfolio, you wouldn't even feel that we kind of missed on those two. But we're set up as individual investment vehicles, right? Yeah. So I'm like, anytime that I can have more scale and if we can invest in a portfolio that has like 9 properties, I love it because maybe 1 or 2 of those properties will be duds, but the rest of them are going to be studs. And it raises, you don't even feel the 2 that are rough. So like when I look at our entire, like if I can, in our software, I can roll up everything.
Sure. And
see all the income statements rolled up. And cash flow statements and whatnot, and I do that, and I'm like, you don't even notice that we've got 2 that kind of are like, know, and because the other ones just cover it, right?
But it's like it's an interesting point there, right? Like as if someone's investing,
but you break them out alone and like, oh, these are. But
you maybe have a dog. What would you say, a dud and a stud? That's funny. But it's funny. I mean, this is an interesting topic that we could jump into or not or come back to, but. when someone's investing through like a syndication, they're doing an individual deal. I think that like managing the expectation of these investors is really important. I'm sure you deal with it.
Got to the point where I try to just talk people out of investing with us.
It's funny you say that because I was thinking about that, right? Like, could people, I think over the last, whether it's reading books about real estate or, you know, the social media talking about how great real estate is, whether it's Cardone or you know, Robert Kiyosaki, and there's nothing wrong with them, right? But people get this idea that real estate is a definite, for sure thing, right? And so they see projections and they think, oh, well, I'm definitely going to get that.
Right.
But it's just like picking a stock.
Yeah.
And so to your point, like if you invest in, you know, all of your deals, I think you're doing pretty good.
Yep.
You know, but you can never really predict which one's going to do really well or what's
100%.
maybe not going to work out.
Yeah. So I'm talking to people, they're like, well, how much are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm going all in, but like, I'm not, you know, but I go all in on every single deal. I'm not just picking and choosing.
Right.
I'm not picking this one and then skipping 3 and then picking this one and skipping 3.
Right.
Because I really believe in what we do. And like, I believe in what I do, and I'm convicted. Every property we buy, I think is going to be a winner, but I know I'm going to be wrong, maybe 1 or 2 or 3% where, you know, and I think if we hold it long enough, it'd still be a winner. Yeah. But is it what that other person is going to really want to invest in? And so that's why I almost try to talk people out of investing, or I really tell them, look, like, you should be picking me and another operator to invest with, and then you should invest in every single deal. So instead of just if you've got 500,000, don't go 500,000 just in this one deal.
Totally.
Give me 75 right now for this one, and invest 75 in the next one. Invest 75 in the next one, and because that way you're going to be good with us. But you know, you never know when you might catch a snag on one property, or or get caught.
Yeah, diversify.
Yeah,
right.
Don't the last couple of years I've learned a lot too, because the couple that we did a lot of great stuff with variable rate financing. I mean, Fund 3 were in variable for a while, and it worked really, really well for us. But then, the 2 properties that I'm talking about before, one that we've already sold now, where basically we returned 80% of people's capital or whatever it was. So kind of people took a hit. It was variable rate, and we just kind of got behind the 8 ball, and things changed faster than we thought, right? So I've learned a lot too. Yeah. And I tell people all the time, like there's one investor that he's been in with us for like every single deal, like 200 or something like that, every single deal. And he's like, at least you learn something. I'm like, yeah, but Tom, like, I don't want to learn with your money. Like, I don't want, that's not, and obviously my family and, I got a lot of money in these deals, but, so it's,
but it's interesting. Like, I don't know if you have these conversations with folks, but if you lose, if you have a loser 1 in every 10 and you lose 20%, but your upside is doubling your money, like Fund 3, that's a 5 to 1 risk reward, right? Like if you have $100,000, I'm going to lose 20, but I could make 100.
Yeah,
that means you can be right, or you could be wrong, 5 times, and then right once, and you're still at break even.
Well, and the way that we've structured, I just from going through some of the stuff too, we've structured things. I think about things differently. I look at things differently. Yeah. Like the deals we've bought since, the ones that, in the variable rate that got, the one that got away from us a little bit. Yeah. We're in like Springdale, we didn't have enough for CapEx right out of the gate, right? So then as the revenue and NOI rose, we were having to take some of the excess cash flow instead of distributing it. Like we're still paying distributions there, but instead of distributing more, we have to put it back into the property. Right. Well, pretty much the last 5 to 7 deals I've done, we basically fronted a huge portion of the CapEx or have access to, and we're in fixed financing. From the beginning. Yeah. We raised. So like the 246 units we bought up in La Crosse, we only needed, I think to buy that one, we would only needed to raise $4 million or whatever, but we closed the deal with like $9 million. Deal, right? We closed the deal with like $9 million. We're doing 100% of the CapEx with cash that we brought to the table to go for the fixed rate loan. And
that's interesting, because I think earlier on in your journey, I mean, you always wanted to buy something that cash flow from day one. Yep. But you've always been a believer of reinvesting in the property. Yep. Right. I mean, but you're kind of just saying, bring a lot of CapEx up front.
Well, So as I've scaled, right, the thing is you scale, which people don't think about until you start to scale, is if you try to start to do it all out of all this just out of the cash flow as you go, number one, you could be wrong on how much it actually costs a little bit, and it costs more out of your cash flow, and then you disrupt distributions even more, whatever. But the number two is like to let something bleed out for 3 or 4 or 5 years and try to do it over 4 or 5 years to do the CapEx. Yeah. It just takes that much more time and energy from the management perspective and like all your team's perspective.
Yeah.
So whereas if I'm like, man, if we can just get everything done in 8 months now to 12 months, which is what we're on pace to do right now with a lot of our transactions. Now it's like, okay, our facilities team, like, now facilities, you're still taking care of and getting work orders done. You still got turns to do, but from a remodel standpoint and a CapEx standpoint, like if 99% of that stuff's done, where now we just got to keep our eye and plan for roofs in the future, HVAC in the future, whatever, because you're just going to have certain things go, but we don't have really anything else to do. It just gives them their time back. Now we can go do the next project.
Right.
So they're not having to like get a new project added to them and then still go back and do this one that we've been doing for 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a ton of sense. They can focus on one property at a time, turn it around and move on.
It's just a little bit more of a smooth process and, a little bit more efficient with our team's time. Yeah.
So that's interesting too, because if you circle back to like 2021, you were very ambitious in growing your portfolio, at least your mindset, the things you kind of posted about, the conversations we had. And I think in the last, year or two, you've really focused on operations.
Yeah, I'd say like the last 24 months. We've really been 24, 30 months. We've really been more operation focused, and we've changed a lot of things. We've added a lot of great new people. Our company's changed a lot, but the mindset has really been, okay, let's especially the last year now is let's get in and out of these properties as fast as possible. The last year and a half.
You mean from the renovation
CapEx standpoint? Yeah. To be able to add that value as fast as possible and to have a cash burn and that to be prepared for that cash burn and have access to cash to burn in that first 6, 8, 12 months. Yeah. But then, to be able to take a property from being worth, 18 million to 36 million and do it again, instead of over 4 or 5 or 6 years, do it in 8 months, 12 months, 16 months. Yeah. So then you do the math on it too. And like what that can compound to be, I really think 12 to 18 months from right now, it's gonna be a crazy amount of personal capital I'll be able to put because of how much capital I've put into these recent deals and how quickly we're starting to turn them around, and we'll be able to refinance out a lot of that money and unlock a lot of that money and be able to go do the next.
Did you 1031 your slice of the pie out of Fund 3 at all?
No,
that was kind of a unique
because of how the fund was. So it had been everybody or nobody. So nothing was 1031 out of that.
Is that fully sold now?
No, so we've got 14 duplexes left yet.
Okay.
So we started with 32 duplexes. So we got 14, I think it's 32 duplexes for 64 units. Yeah.
Wow.
So,
that's
so we've got 14 duplexes left. Yeah. We got one that's supposed to sell on Friday. I just got an offer, actually, a guy that wants to buy 2. The pricing's not necessarily where I want it to be, but I'm going to get to a point where it's not going to be worth nickel and dime, or trying to hold off for an extra $20,000 per duplex. I think just sell them, and because people get their money back faster.
That'll be
sell them anyways.
2x plus to investors.
Yeah, to investors should be 2.1 to 2.2 in about 4 years.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
So
that was such an interesting deal. Yeah, you found it on the MLS.
Yeah. Well, I passed on it numerous times. And
did you? What was the reason for that?
I think like so many people. You just look at it from a high level. It didn't make sense from how many units, a unit perspective and the price per unit, and but then when you sat down and actually put a value on each individual thing, right? Yeah. If you were willing to take the time and like we're doing retail off all the duplexes, you're like, oh, this is interesting now.
It's so interesting because you bought that at the beginning of 21.
Yeah, January, the day before. I think we closed the day before Biden was inaugurated. I think.
Yeah. Okay. So it was so interesting because interest rates went down a ton, the 12 months before that, 9 months before that. And I think they offered it. It was on the market for a long period of time on the MLS. And they offered it, a 6 cap? Like a 5.9 cap?
Can't remember the cap, to be honest.
I think it was something like that. Yeah. But at the time, the market was like a 5 cap. Mm-hmm. But you had that arbitrage because you found it on the MLS, which is, you don't find 218 units. Right. But it was interesting.
That never happens.
No, that was incredible. But what was interesting is the way you ended up playing it out is what a lot of people have figured out since then, which they're buying these scattered site townhomes and kind of single family rentals, and they're buying them as a portfolio, and they're going, hey, if I'm buying them for $200 a door, but I can always sell them off one by one for at least $200 a door, $250 or $300 a door, But you ended up doing that.
Yep.
But this is well before people were thinking about that.
Yeah.
In 2021.
Well, again, I just break it down to the simplest thing that I can see. So like with 96 East, I would just look at, again, it's not rocket science. Like, what are other 1-bedroom apartments going for? And there's your bottom. There's your kind of bottom feeder
Worst
apartment.
Scenario,
yeah. Like, okay, well, why can't we at least just hit that? I mean, and there's the same thing with that is, I'm like, okay, well, I looked at the 78 unit, the 76 unit, because that's what I was interested in out of that. And so I kind of already had values assigned to those.
Right.
So I'm like, well, wait a minute, this bridge, I'm going to get for paying the bridge to what they want from, the pricing I'm coming up with on the 78 unit, 76 unit. And then you got the pricing bridge to what they want for the entire portfolio. I'm like, for that bridge, I'm basically getting 32 duplexes. I'm like, well, if they cash flow right now, and then if I can turn around and look at comps of what other duplexes are selling for, I'm like, this is because we picked up the duplexes like $312,000 or $330,000 per duplex. Per duplex. Yeah, per duplex.
Per duplex?
I think. Yeah.
And you're selling them for that like per unit, right? Like $350 a unit roughly.
Well, we're selling per
ballpark.
Yeah. So like per duplex, so for every 2 units, we bought for like $330,000.
Yeah,
we're selling for between the lowest we've sold one for, which was a kind of a crappy one, was like $515,000 or something like that. The highest one we've sold is like $750,000. I would say the average is we're probably averaging about $695,000 or something, $690,000 right now.
Interesting.
Again, $690,000 for a duplex, so that's both sides included.
Yeah. That's nuts. I mean, it's interesting. Like, to put it in perspective, the build for rent theme has been huge since COVID. Right.
Is that still hot? Is it cooled off a little bit?
It cooled off a little bit. I think in the next 3 years, you're going to see a lot more transactions in the Midwest because there's, in 2021, there was 90 build for rent projects being built in Phoenix alone.
Wow.
Just in that market.
Yeah.
And it's probably on average.
Well, construction in general has just slowed down a lot with rates too.
Exactly, right? But so in the Midwest, there was way less than that, right? So a lot of them are finishing up right now and they're leasing up. So I think in the next 12 to 24, 36 months, you're going to see a lot more transactions and it'll kind of validate it. But I mean, I have a client who's building on a North Shore Chicago in a nice town. Maybe I think it's 144 units, and they're expecting to sell for like 800 a unit in 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
And the whole idea is, well, as long as, what is the similar product, same mindset that you had, what is similar product selling for one-off, as a single family home? That's kind of their exit. Obviously
it's a lot harder it's more timely, a little bit more of a headache to exit that way. But if the arbitrage is big enough, it's worth it.
But it's also kind of looking at the downside risk. Like, all right, if we can't sell this as a cash flow and cap rate deal and get $800,000 a door, we can sell them one off.
Oh, right. So the 800 is what they're expecting based on 144 unit cash flow NOI deal,
right?
With the cap rate.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Well, no. So here's the thing: the whole idea is, all right, if the cash flow doesn't justify an $800,000 exit price,
got it.
At least the sales comps of similar product sold
get us
as single family homes is justifiable.
It's getting us there. Got it. Yeah.
Which is the same mentality you had.
Yeah.
And that's my whole point, is that you were looking at this well before the rest of the investment community across the country started doing that.
6 months after we bought that thing was when it just went bonkers with this build to rent, whatever, and the that type of, I'm like, oh man, this is what we just did. Right.
It was kind of right place, right time, but it's just kind of wild. Yeah.
Is he built? So when these people consider these, constructing these, developing these build to rent communities, are they all like kind of duplexes next to each other? Is that pretty much all they are? Or?
Those are like 2,000 square foot townhomes, like 2 or 3 stories, parking on the first floor. They all have different sort of.
How many units are in one building? One contiguous building? Is it like 2? Is it 5? Is it 8?
It can vary. Some are more like row homes. It might be 8. Okay. Some might be 2.
Okay.
So like you said, more of a duplex sort of situation. Some might stand on themselves. I was down in Boca Raton, West Palm with a client a month or so ago, and they have like single family homes that are for rent that are, over $1 million is kind of what they're thinking.
And they're all in like one, like one area, like the same street, and they're all
just like you would have.
They built them.
What's that?
And they built them.
Yeah,
got it.
Yeah, build them, hold them. There's another client that it's kind of interesting. You talk about I'm blanking on the word you used, the fragmented market of multifamily and what people are doing. I've got one client that's planning to develop like 10,000 units, all build to rent over the next 5 to 10 years, and just roll it up and sell it to Wall Street.
Yeah.
Not necessarily your typical maybe it's a real estate fund, maybe it's you know, a BlackRock or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Brad, what exactly do you do?
Good question.
We
didn't even talk about that, did we? So should I answer that, or should he do the intro? Or
no, you got to do it.
No,
I'll
yeah,
do it.
you just keep
We're already
going.
rolling.
Yeah. So I'm a multifamily commercial real estate broker, which some people like, we use it residential, commercial. A lot of people consider multifamily and commercial, but regardless. So I'm a multifamily broker. I work at Cushman Wakefield, which is the third largest firm. But ultimately, Justin's a client of mine, and we basically sell larger multifamily deals, 100 plus units, typically, sometimes 50, depending on the market and the client, to investors, folks like yourself, syndicators. Sometimes it's private individuals, sometimes it's big institutions, and really the deals for us vary between 10 and $100 million. So it kind of, and new buildings, old buildings, really doesn't matter. We're ultimately selling the investment, the cash flow, the opportunity is what we do. But it's funny because, like, if I'm out at a bar or whatever, meeting a friend, they're like, what do you do? Like, I sell multifamily, I sell apartment buildings. And they're like, oh, like you do leasing. I was like, not really. like I sell the whole enchilada. They're like, oh, so you do property management? I'm like, not exactly. Like, people don't really get, people invest in these things and you can sell the whole thing just like you'd sell a stock or a company.
Yeah. You've been doing this. You started in 2019 then. That's when you started?
Yeah, that's when I started.
What did you do prior?
Oh, man, I got an interesting background. I went to school for film, actually.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So I'm very comfortable
you look
with
like
setting,
a film
by the
guy.
way. I look like a film guy?
Yeah, you just look like a guy that could be behind the camera all the time.
I'll take it. Yeah, it was in California. So, yeah, maybe I have a somewhat California look. I don't know. But I went to school called Chapman out in Southern California, a really good film school. I never had like amazing grades, but my claim to fame is that it was harder to get into Harvard that year than it was into that film school. Maybe harder is not the word, but like the acceptance rate was lower. But
we'll just go with harder.
Yeah, we'll go harder. But I did that for 2 years, and I had done a lot in high school here in the suburbs of Chicago, and a lot of it was actually tied to the sports. Football. We did highlight films for the team, pump up videos like you'd see at a sports game, like Bears game, Packers game. But then we also did the individual highlights for guys like you who wanted to go to college, right? And then we did a lot of other things with other sports and local businesses. But so that was kind of my first, actually not really my first entrepreneurial bug, but like when I was 12 years old, I started washing cars in the neighborhood. So that was really my first thing. So went from there to film, went out to school. After 2 years, I was like, man, this is a grind. Because it was like, I had school Monday through Thursday, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I was on film sets for 12 to 15 hours a day. Yeah. And I got burnt out. I was like, I don't know if I want to do this the rest of my life. And I kind of always grew up with a business mind. And I think freshman year of college, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And so then by the end of sophomore year, I kind of got out of film and back into the business school and kind of transitioned. And then came back to Chicago. I knew I wanted to be in multifamily investment sales because when you go to film school for 2 years, you forget how to study. So when I, like junior year, my accounting class I was screwed. I think I got like a C-. I was just terrible. But so I went back to Chicago and wanted to be investment.
But that makes sense. Like for you to struggle in an accounting class when you're a sales guy.
Right.
That makes total sense.
I mean, there's always a joke. It's always a joke. Like, I'm a broker. I don't know math.
Right. It's a rare person that can do like sales and straight up accounting. But anyway.
yeah, accounting is one thing, but obviously we have to know our numbers and stuff. But
right. It's a completely different. Accounting is completely different than knowing your numbers on an investment to
left
sell.
brain, right brain.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different level of detail.
Because you stick me in a room and be an accountant for a whole year. No,
my daughter can figure out like using the cap rate, NOI, and all that. It's basic math that we do with the some of that stuff versus the accounting type is
somebody once
details different.
told me once, they're like, investment real estate isn't rocket science. It's addition, subtraction, and occasionally some multiplication and division.
Yep,
100%. It's nothing crazy. But no, my point of what I was saying was I came back to Chicago and I didn't have the greatest GPA. I think it was like a 3.0. And really, reality in Chicago is a lot of people, big institutional firms, like they're hiring from, the Big Ten. They're hiring top of class people.
Institutional firms like what?
On the buy side, funds like whether it's
got it. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, like a lot of institutional.
It's like a private equity type firm who's buying up the multifamily is what you're talking about?
Exactly.
Got it. Okay.
Exactly. I have a lot of friends who went to the Midwest schools who ended up at those type of firms, right?
Yeah.
But they look for the Big Ten schools. They look for the good grades, the connectivity from alumni, and like nobody went to Chapman in the Midwest, so they're like, I don't know what school that is. Throw that out.
Right.
But I knew that if I could pick up a phone and call somebody, that I could add some value to somebody. So while I was kind of networking and figuring out where I'd end up, the tough part, if you want to be a multifamily broker, there's kind of two paths. You could kind of be at one of the bigger shops that focuses on $10 to $100 million buildings, like a Cushman or a JLL or a CB, but you typically have to come in as an analyst. And then you do that for 3 to 5 years. And if there's a need, you can transition to a broker, right? The other way is you go to like a Marcus & Millichap, a Matthews, a more, more of the $1 to $10 million space. And it's kind of it's a volume game. You make 50, 60 calls a day and you learn the cold call game and you just learn from doing, right? And so I knew I wanted to be at one of the bigger shops working on kind of more sophisticated deals. But there's really only 4 or 5 seats in any market.
Right.
So I was.
It is kind of a little crazy game.
To get into that
little crazy industry. Yeah, it is.
I mean, it's no different than like trying to be a quarterback on a sports team.
Yeah.
There's only 32 NFL teams.
Right.
And, first, second, third string.
So 4 to 5 seats. Keep going.
Yeah. So I had been networking and stuff, but nothing was opening up. So I got tapped on the shoulder by my sister's friend and was like, hey, you should come work at this tech sales firm. And so I did tech sales for about a year, and I was making 50, 60 cold calls a day and kind of cut my teeth doing that. And I just banged my head against the wall for an entire year.
Yeah.
And eventually, through networking, got an opportunity to come into brokerage.
Cool.
And they basically said, and it was at Cushman, and they basically just said, all we need you to do is make cold calls.
Yeah.
And just build relationships.
Yeah.
So I kind of had the best of both worlds, which was, just come in, start as a broker right away, but you're also at a big firm.
Yeah.
Which is, I probably would say, isn't super common.
Right. Sweet. That answer your question, Joel?
I forgot you asked the question.
No, it's good.
But yeah, then you started right when we got introduced then. Basically. Yeah. You started and they were like, hey, let's give the new guy this due diligence.
Yeah, I got thrown into that.
He can head up to Janesville
and then
go with this kid who's buying this 96 units from us.
Yeah. They were like, you should get to know Justin. You guys are like similar ages. So yeah, I remember that. You were probably 29 at the time?
Well, 30? I'm 35 now. So
sounds about right.
Yeah, about 28, 29.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have turned 30. Yeah, I was 29 and a half. Would have turned 30 6 months after that, 2019.
So I remember we were just walking the property shooting the shit. And
around outside.
Yeah.
It was a sunny day.
And you were, I don't know if you just met Jamie or you maybe just proposed.
2019.
Would have been close.
Well, we got married. Yeah, I would have. Yeah, we were living on the lake already. So,
okay.
Yeah. So
really?
I would have been proposing probably that fall. That October was when I proposed. And then we got married in October 2020.
I don't think you were living at the lake at that time, were you?
Maybe it was just right around that then. I think so.
Because I think you were still living in an apartment.
Maybe I was, yeah. It's kind of I don't know, that whole transition. We got married August 2020. And we got engaged October 2019. So this was like 5 months.
So yeah,
5 months. But when we were walking
later.
that day, probably 6 months away from.
I think you were
engaged,
saying I think I'm going to propose. Yeah.
Yep.
It was funny because when I went back to your book recently and you talked about, you're like, I was really nervous my first 2 dates with her.
100%.
I can't imagine you being nervous.
Oh God, yeah, I was for whatever reason.
I mean, athlete, you had a lot of pressure. You know.
I don't know if I was like really nervous. I'm just like. I'm pretty straight to the point, and she always calls it was an interview,
The first
two dates was an interview.
Okay.
She's like, yeah, there was no...
Because there was no like flow to it?
Yeah,
it was just kind of like...
I was just like rattling off questions, and she's like, this feels like an interview. So it was the interview.
I mean, it kind of is.
Yeah. Well, but the thing is with me, I'm kind of right to it. Right. So just get right to the interview part.
I can see that
compress
part.
that timeline, and instead of having to figure this out over a year and a half, 2 years, let's kind of figure this out now.
But it sounded like you had like a date, and then some time went on, and you had another
there's like
date.
6 months in between the two interviews.
You're like, I built my resume up. We got to do this one more time.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've had quite a journey since then.
Yeah.
You brought on.
Well, yeah, because that was the first kind of fund where we brought in a handful. Signature 23 is when we brought in the first handful of investors. It wasn't part of a fund, and that would have closed the fall of 2018. So then Spalding Equity Fund 1, which was 96 East, which is the 96 units that we're talking about, that was kind of the first fund that we kind of put together, like that we've kind of done 10 times now. So
that's wild.
Yeah, now we're kind of getting to the point again where like I'm looking at this and doing some math, and I'm like, man, like I think there's going to be 20 to 40% of what we buy over the next handful of years will be just 100% my own money, and maybe a couple other individuals that I'll keep allowing to be in them and whatnot, because they've been with me for so long, and family and whatnot.
That's really interesting though, because going back to kind of your mindset shift, like you're not necessarily like, oh, I want to get to 50,000 units anymore.
No.
So talk to me about that shift mentally.
I mean, I still do. I think like when when I'm just first starting, I think it's like the unit count is just kind of something that you can latch onto, right? But then like as you mature a little bit more in what you're doing, like I just put everything back to like, okay, well, this is what I want to do in my life. This is what I want to be able to do. It's a cash flow number. Like I want to get this cash flow, right? So I don't necessarily care total unit count anymore. Now, again, that could change again tomorrow. And there's still days I wake up, I'm like, yeah, I want... Now, but that also being said, I still do have like targets from a unit standpoint to keep getting to the point where like we hit different scale thresholds that kind of help everything, including the management arm. Because the management game is just scale, right?
Sure, 100%.
So, but I really don't see ourselves going third party unless there's a business out there that we can buy that's got 10,000 to 20,000 units of their third party managing. Right. We buy that. Now that can also be like a transaction pipeline potentially. Right. But I have no desire to do any third party. So I mean, again, it'll be a lot of what we own, but for the management company to ultimately, I think, do the best job for my money as an investor, is the more scale we have there, the better that company's going to be. So, I know us at 4,000, 5,000 units is going to be better for the management company and better returns and just better efficiency overall. It should be, if it works out the way I think about it, than where we are at 2,000 units now. And in like the last year, we've sold some and we've bought some, and so, and we're just kind of I think it's just kind of, we're in a kind of a little bit of a repositioning or rebalancing type phase of some of this stuff, and just again because of a mindset shift. But I there's another explosion coming here at some point, whether that's this year or next year, where we pick off. I think it'll be, we had the explosion years in 2021 and 2022 where we picked off like 800 and 1,000 units or whatever it was, or 400, 500, 600 and then 1,000 or whatever. I think the next explosion that we have is going to be like 1,500 to 2,500 in a year that will end up. That's what I feel like will happen.
So for you, is that I would imagine a couple of factors. One, you kind of get your operations to the place you want to be. Yeah. Which you've been kind of going through that evolution, and then also kind of market conditions shifting. Yeah,
I think more so the first part. Yeah. Because like with what I've seen over the last 12 years, like I really feel the way that we buy deals and with where we look
12
and
years
whatever.
Or 12 months?
Sorry, 12 years. I said 12 months.
No, you said years. I'm just confirming.
The last like 12 months since I've been doing this, just real estate in general, and picking up properties in general, right? And we picked up a lot off market and whatnot. And I really think no matter what the market is, there's always really good deals to be had, especially when you can invest for a long-term mindset. And like, to be honest, that's why I'm even more excited to use a lot of my own money a lot more, is because there's so many deals over the last 2 or 3 years that I've passed on because I just know that I know what I can raise money for and really fast and really effectively, and what I can't. And so there's some deals that maybe don't hit a number that a lot of people that are writing the bigger checks necessarily want to see in years 1 and 2. And I'm like, but over the long term, like this could be a really good investment, but I had to pass on it because, because I didn't feel like it was right for us to raise capital.
Hard to raise money for,
right.
But you felt like.
But if I'm writing the full check,
yeah.
Right. So it gives us a little bit more opportunity to take on some other deals that I think would be really good opportunities.
I think it's kind of cool, and I actually think it's probably not as typical for someone who started off syndicating. Like most people who start off syndicating just want to keep growing.
Right.
And they want more unit count, they want more AUM, and I think that's more typical. I think it's kind of cool that you're shifting to like, no, I really just need to, I want to just do what's good for me and my family.
Yeah.
And
but again, that being said, is I still want to own an NFL team one day, right? So like you do the math on that, like that still takes scale. It's just different. Like I'm just trying to I look at it a little bit differently than just straight up unit count.
Yeah. Well, so I was going to say this earlier when we were talking about Monarch, the one company with 70,000 plus units. What's really amazing about their journey is it started in 2006,
which is crazy.
Which is less than 20 years, right? Yeah. And there's an old Tony Robbins saying. He goes, most people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in a decade.
100%.
And so it's really interesting. Okay, you're 35 years old. Yeah, you can own that NFL team by the time you're 65, no problem.
I think it's going to have to be 30 billion, 50 billion by then.
Yeah, they're going to be pretty expensive.
Yeah.
They're going to be expensive.
I mean, at that point, you might as well just open up a Canadian football team. So that would be the 51st state anyways.
Right. Yeah, that might happen next year. Yeah.
Well, I mean, but like what you said about the 1 year, 10-year thing, I mean, yeah, because like the goals I wrote down in 2017, I thought it was going to take me 2017, 2018, I thought it was going to take me 12, 10 years to do that. And like did it like 3 or 4. So not one, but did it in like 3 or 4.
Right.
And so again, it's the same thing like, getting someone else started and say like I come from network marketing, direct sales background. Right. And like you get someone there who's like amped up to do something. And again, like they don't have success over 1 month. It's like, well, you just completely and then they quit. You completely overestimated what you did there. And like, I can't tell you how many times that we do events so like let's say I got you involved. We'd go do an event for you and your friends, family, whatever. You get them there. We do another one, whatever. You give it a month. You don't see the check come or the result come. You quit. Right. I can't tell you how many times that from those meetings, then people would just get a hold of me directly because we built a relationship when I was there with them. And the friend's no longer involved, and then they rock and roll and they go and crush it.
Right.
And that person who quit. Now, that might be 3 months, 4 months, 6 months later, but that happens so much.
Mm-hmm. It's funny.
So many people do that. They think they can accomplish so much more in a short period of time versus that longer period of time, and then they quit. And it's like, don't quit.
I never made this connection until you talked about it right now, but that same network effect is got to be very similar to your investor relations. Mm-hmm. And because, you maybe meet one guy and they go, I'm not interested, but I know a guy who might be. And then you meet that one guy, and then he's like, "Oh, I'm in." And then he has like 3 friends who are in.
100%.
Because they call it the country club pass the hat.
Plus,
right?
if you then are like smart about what you do and how you treat people and whatever, like people don't know this. I'm in my 3rd company right now that's kind of like an affiliate type, network marketing, direct sales thing. And if I shared the check that I got last month, both of you'd be like, "What? Holy shit!"
Really? Wow. I didn't know you were still doing it. Yeah, that's yeah. We're gonna cut that one out.
But a lot of it, a lot of it is again relationships and how you build teams and and so it's crazy. But how much you give yourself time.
So when it came to raising capital and starting to raise capital, how did that experience overlay to your direct sales?
Well, I think what direct sales helped me when it came to that was I could care less. Like I hear the word no, I just like that doesn't affect me. I just roll on to the next person. So I was just zero bashful to ask. Yeah. Because like when I started in direct sales, like I made my first year out of college, I made $11,000.
Right.
So for me, like to grow that, and then direct sales, because I got so many no's, I just kept going and going. I heard it so many times. Then I realized people would come around, and then I'd just make more and more money the next year. So I realized like, okay, well, if I can at least talk to you say no, not right now, but if I can just then get you at least on my database or whatever, so I can follow up with you, then that's the key. So the more no's, I don't hear it as a no. I just like forever, it's a no for right now. You know, but you got to be around long enough to be able to get that no to a yes. Sure.
Which is very simple. I mean, the same thing in my business as well as if you're trying to get a deal off market.
100%. Yeah.
And I'm curious. A lot of clients that I talk to who own these deals are like, oh, I get 10, 15 calls a week. So how do you think
especially now, like it's changed a lot too because of how many people do it now. But like when I first started doing it, I think there's a lot less calls being made too. So that
from other buyers like yourself.
Yeah. I think it happens a lot more now.
Interesting.
But still, like even now, like when I cold call, if I sit to cold call, I'll find a deal pretty quick.
Really?
Yeah, I can find a deal pretty quick. I don't know what.
How many calls do you think you have to make before?
I bet if I sat down and made, I don't know, 100 calls, I'd find a deal pretty quick.
So 100 calls, but not 100 answers. Like people answer the phone. Yeah,
just 100 calls.
5 to 10 people answer.
I think I could find between now and then of the week, I'd easily be able to find one. So maybe if I have to do 200 calls, fine, whatever. But like,
yeah.
And I think part of it is just like that mindset though too of like,
sure.
I've already done the deal before it's even happened. We talked about this when your brother was on, a couple of weeks ago. It was like, some of the best people out there, they don't once there's a win, they have no reaction to it, and that's kind of how I am. Like we close a deal, everyone's like, yeah, and I'm just like,
next one,
yeah, because like I already saw it happen, I already expected it, I already envisioned it, I already felt it. It's what was supposed to happen, and that's what I'm kind of like when we do these when I call for these deals too. And so I think that energy makes things happen.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that have come up that I think is interesting for maybe some of your mastermind guys. So I think there's a tremendous advantage if you live in like a secondary or tertiary market, say in the Midwest, whether it's Janesville or maybe it's Fort Wayne, Indiana, or Kalamazoo, Michigan, where one of them is getting started, right? You can, if you go to a big city like a Chicago, it's just going to cost so much more to live there. Right.
100%.
And then I think a few things. There's a lot more distractions.
Yeah,
the stimulus in Chicago is a lot more than maybe at Janesville.
Yeah.
And so it's way easier.
But there's also ballers who take a meeting at 11 p.m. in Chicago.
Okay, that's an interesting point. Explain.
Well, I just think, I mean, look at like New York City, some of these big cities, like, yeah, there's a lot of distractions, but you also find, you can also get in the right networks where you could work 19, 20 hours a day and be having meetings from 5 a.m. till midnight. Yeah. You don't find like around here, I don't get as many 11 p.m. meetings. You could do that. I could have been doing that in Chicago and New York if that's where I was a younger professional. I think.
That's an interesting perspective. I didn't think about. Well, so what I was going to say though is I think for some of these folks that are in more secondary markets, cost of living is a big advantage. Maybe more focused is an advantage, less distraction. There's pros and cons either way, right?
Yeah.
And then I think your other point is if you cold call through Chicago, like a lot of those firms are going to be professionally owned, the people who own them.
Like properties downtown.
Yeah. And they're only going to sell through a broker.
Yeah.
If you call 100%. Through Wisconsin or Michigan or Indiana, they're going to be more open to, I don't, a lot, unfortunately, part of my job, people are like, oh, I don't trust brokers.
Yeah. And I don't even care what the state is really. I think it's just getting away from the metropolitan area.
I'm just throwing out states as an example, but
Like, cause I mean, we got guys that like, we got guys in our mastermind group and accelerator group that, we got Ryan Manning. He's in New York, but he's upstate.
Sure.
And he's freaking crushing it.
Right.
He joined us a year and a half ago. He had like $100,000. He's rolled that 100 into like $1 million already. Now he's looking to, so like it's crazy what he's done in maybe it's 18 months, 24 months. Like it's crazy what he's done just picking up properties, 2 unit, 6 unit. Now he's like, because he looks at so many deals now, there's like flips that just come to him. So he does that kind of on the side to make more money. Wow. He'll pick up a couple single family homes in a year and flip them and make 10.
So he's doing smaller deals. He's doing like
but now he's
deals.
Yes, but now he's to the point where it's like starting to get to the point where like his equity's grown enough and he's starting to be able to look at, okay, I could either sell this or refinance out and now we'll buy a 40 unit or a 50 unit.
Right.
And so. But again, that's an example of, I think there's a lot of people that just don't realize that it doesn't have to just be the Midwest. I think it just can't be a downtown, a top 100 downtown metropolitan type city.
Yeah.
Or top 75,
even top
whatever
20.
Whatever it is. But the cool thing is like you can start to go 35, 45 an hour out of Chicago. And now again, you start to find places where you could still do this.
Yeah.
In my mind.
So one thing that's interesting, and I think you wrote about in the book too, a lot of times when people get started out, they just go for what's attainable. So they see that, in 2019, they see the $30,000 per unit opportunity, and then they buy it and they go, holy hell, this is a bad, rough deal or in a bad market.
Bad, rough area.
Yeah. Do you, is that something you advise against in your mastermind?
Yeah.
Because I know you made that mistake.
Those the 24 unit, the 40 unit over Milwaukee, those are rough areas. We did make a lot of money, but man, like we had a murder in the parking lot. And so I tell people, like when we're analyzing deals, when people bring them to me on our Thursday call, the first thing I ask them, like, okay, is this a neighborhood you live in? Would you live in the neighborhood? I'm not asking about the property. The property can be rough. Because you can change the property, but you're not going to change the area. Right. I learned that. Unless you control enough of the area, which you got to buy blocks and blocks. No one in my mastermind is buying blocks and blocks. Yeah. So, I definitely say, look, I say I'm not trying to go to a war zone, and I'm not going to recommend, because I'm only going to tell them and teach to them what I've done that's been successful. Yeah. I'm not going to like say, hey, we're going to this war zone. That's a good idea. I'm like, I'm not in this one. Yeah. Yeah. It's not
if
you want to buy it, you can go do it. But here was the problems I had, and my guess is you're going to have those same problems with this property.
Right. Now, some people have created a hell of a business doing that sort of thing.
For sure.
But maybe it's not for everybody.
What's the guy?
Joe Barata.
Yeah.
Hell of a business.
Out of, what's the name again? Joe Barata, right?
Joe Barata.
Joe Barata out of a Milwaukee area. But he's got, what has he got? 40,000 units? I don't know.
I don't know if it's that much, but it's a lot.
It's a lot. 20,000? It's tens of thousands. It's 10,000. It's more than 10,000 units.
Yeah, and it's all on kind of the rougher.
It's in the area where those 24 unit. I mean, he was my neighbor over there in a lot of those properties.
Sure. Yeah.
He's got a hell of a business.
There was a company that did that in Chicago, and I don't remember how many units this was, but they sold it a few years ago for 9 figures, the whole portfolio. Yeah. I think it was like 8,000 units. Yeah. And they sold it to a group out of New York.
Yeah. Well, you got enough scale. I mean, there's always going to be some type of buyer,
Right. And they bought the whole company. They bought the whole operation.
Well, it makes sense.
Because
the operation at that point, if you can actually do that, because it takes an operation to manage that.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, you're just dealing with other problems, unfortunately. What did the Monarch guys do before they started? That they've gone from 2006, they started at 0, and now they're at 70,000 plus units. What did they do? Do you know the background?
I could say this, but someone's probably going to fact check me. I believe Bob Nichols I think he was in like private equity or some sort. I think he was buying and selling companies maybe or something like that.
And that's all. They've got investors and they got funds.
Yeah, so I do have some interesting things I've heard. Like I said, someone's going to fact check me, but so they actually started off not buying multifamily, but they bought a mountain in Colorado called Monarch Mountain in 2006. Okay. And then
what are they gonna do? Ski hill or what?
It's resort? A ski hill. Okay. Yeah, and it's one of the only places in Colorado where you can snowcat ski as opposed to helicat skiing. They actually take a snowcat up in the mountains and you ski fresh powder and stuff.
What's a snowcat?
A snowcat is like that's a good question.
I have no idea.
Just like 5 words. It's like a snowmobile.
Imagine a tractor with big treads on it, like a tank. Yeah. And it grooms the mountain.
Okay,
for the skiers to go down.
Got it. Okay, right? Cool.
But they'll load up, 10 people in the back. They'll go up a random mountain, and you'll ski 2 feet of powder all the way down.
Okay, cool.
Anyway, so they started with that, and then from there, they started buying multifamily. And what's wild, I don't know what their how many billions of dollars of assets they have, but I heard somewhere their average check size is $75,000. So it's
a lot of checks then.
It's a lot of checks, but a lot of groups that are that big have these big institutional 7-figure, 8-figure check writers. Yeah. So it's amazing that they've built this database of just high net worth individuals.
Yeah. I don't know much about this. That's the thing too about us is like how I've grown. I'm not crazy connected like across the country or like, I mean, locally a little bit more. I've become more and more connected, but like can't tell you who some of the biggest players are across the country because I'm not at the national level playing on the national. Where's Monarch from?
Colorado.
Oh, Colorado.
Yeah, that's where they're headquartered.
Gotcha. But then you got
Bob Nichols went to Iowa. He's a Midwest guy. He's actually from Chicago suburbs.
Got it. But yeah, I mean, you look at what they've done, 18 years, right?
Yeah.
From 0 to 70,000 units in 18 years.
I mean, I really think they hit 60, 70,000 in 15,
Well, and some of those bases they must have been buying at between 06 and 13, and even through the, looking at it now, even, in 2015, 2017, I mean, they picked up a ton of product for probably I mean, probably less than $100,000 a door. You know?
Yeah,
probably less than $60,000 a door. Well, they do value add, right? So I mean, there's some value add stuff. They're actually, probably picking stuff up for less than $30,000, $20,000 a door.
They're not huge value add guys. They're really an operations firm at this point.
Yeah.
Maybe earlier on they were.
Yeah.
I sold a deal to them in Michigan. Michigan's where they started. They were buying, 10, 12 caps back in the late 2000s and 2010s.
Yeah.
So they're certainly,
so not only do they see a huge increase in their NOI, then they also got double on the multiplier on the way out.
From cap rate compression.
Right.
But they never sell.
Right.
They very rarely.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not too dissimilar from your business plan.
Right.
You're just maybe more value add mindset, but you're kind of hold forever.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
that's the goal with what we want to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, we've got certain assets that we got to figure out because we told investors, hey, 5 to 10 years. There's nothing in the documents that makes us sell, but I want to be good on my word. And so we'd figure out again whether it's a related party transfer. I mean, some of the assets will for sure sell. I mean, we've discussed some of this stuff, but
I ask you this, I feel like every year, like, do you see yourself staying in Wisconsin for a while? Do you see yourself expanding?
I think it's somewhere between it's going to be, I think, somewhere between 4,000 to 5,000 units. And then at that point, I would think I'd think that we'll look at least to try to get another location or something.
Yeah. But especially if you spend all this time on operations, you might as well tack onto that instead of going to Indiana or something.
What are you seeing out there in the marketplace as far as real estate from, buyers, sellers? I mean, you're just out there, you talk to a lot of people. What are you seeing? It's been an interesting couple of years and just kind of where we're at. What are you seeing? Yeah.
I mean, it's this year's going to be a lot more transactional than last year and the year before that.
All right, because so when was the low? 2023 was the low, right?
Yeah.
2024 bounced back a little bit
from a transaction standpoint.
Yeah, not really bounce back at all.
I think Q1 of 24 was less volume than Q2 of 2020. If I'm trying to remember that stat correctly, which obviously that was right after COVID, nothing transacted.
Yeah.
And going into 2024 was just a huge question mark.
Right.
It might have been 24 or 23. But I think things are picking up for a handful of reasons. Mainly you just have expired business plans, you have expired debt maturities, expired equity, investors who want their money back, banks who want their money back, and business plans that have that are probably 2 or 3 years old. Mm-hmm. They were supposed to do the value add and completed a couple years ago, and it didn't work out.
Yep.
Or maybe it did work out, but the market wasn't good to sell, so now it's time to sell. It's been interesting to see. I'd kind of put sellers, at least for transactions, into a few buckets. You've got people who got into deals at a really good basis, most likely before 2020, or like Fund 3, like you got a good deal in 2021, who are selling because they still got a great return, right? You've got people who are maybe just going to accept a single or a double, and they're going to say, hey, I'm going to get out, I'm going to recycle it and do the next cycle and try to get a good deal, right? And then you have people who really are in pain, who they've got debt maturity that they're staring at. They're still on interest, floating rate debt. Some of that, a lot of that in the Midwest was actually new construction. There wasn't a ton of floating rate debt in the Midwest for kind of
more conservative here.
Yeah, it's a very real thing. And the other reality is it's less competitive, right?
Yep.
Like if you were 2021 in the Smile states, which is kind of coast to coast in the South, there was 30, 40 offers on any given deal. And so the only way to get that deal was to get floating rate debt.
Right.
So it got so hot, and you had to get floating rate debt, and then rates went up a ton. And then, people weren't able to cover their interest payment. They weren't able to do their value add program because the CapEx was going to pay the interest. And so those people are selling now. And a lot of them would probably be lucky to get out break even. I've seen deals as a broker where people are barely getting out of the deal with any equity at all.
Yeah.
I think the interesting perspective that I realized the first few years in this business is that real estate is not as, certain of a thing as everyone says.
Yeah, but I think it is if you structure it right.
Yeah.
Because like,
excuse me,
no problem.
Coming off a cold.
But because if you structure it right with the right type of debt and you have a long enough runway, those deals would probably still end up paying out and it'd still be over the long run again a good return. Yeah. It's just when it's a capital problem, right? Yeah. Because I mean, again, the two hiccups that we've had, it's been a capital stack problem. It's not necessarily even been an asset problem.
Yeah, exactly. It's been a
timing and
the fundamentals of multifamily have been great. Like nothing in the last 5 years were a fundamental issue.
Right.
The assets was good. It was the way the capital was structured.
Right. Yeah.
So, and I agree with you. Over a long enough time period, you're going to be fine.
But the problem is like some people are having to come up with more equity to keep the deal right now. They have to infuse it with more equity, right, to keep it, potentially buy down some of the debt to get new debt on it at higher rates, and that's fixed rate debt and all that stuff. So. And a lot of people don't want to do that because they'd rather just, again, get it off their books and go deal with something else.
I mean, I think like, for example, for you, though, you buy a lot of deals off market, cash flowing. Yeah. You have an idea for the long term. And with that, you're going to be okay. Right. Right. It's the people who try to do these 3 to 5 year flips that have, debt with a term on it or expensive debt that have gotten into issues. And just like everyone always talks about, any like leverage is a two-sided coin, right? If things are going for you, it's great. If it goes against with you, that's where you have a problem, right?
It's tough. How many people, so you kind of broke down the different sellers in different buckets. How many people are actually hurting, do you think? Because this is something that's been talked about, I feel like now for like 2 years. And the big question, like what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, when is it going to happen? Because I think there's a lot of people out there that thought this was going to happen already, and it really hasn't yet. Yeah. And so it's like, is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? How bad is that going to be?
So I always find the psychology of investing in real estate specifically pretty interesting. And so people in general have a recency bias. What happened last time this happened? Right. And so even in 2020, when everything went to hell in a handbag, everyone was going, oh my God, it's going to be the 08, 09. We're going to get deals for, super, super cheap. Right. The reason that didn't really happen was because you had a lot more liquidity. You had a lot of equity that still wanted to buy multifamily, and the debt markets did not freeze up like they did in 08, 09, right? Because in 08, 09, Fannie and Freddie, the agencies that lend on most multifamily, were privatized. Yep. Right? So that froze up, and then equity was not nearly as interested in investing in multifamily in 08, 09 as they are in 2020 or today. Right. So that's why back then there was deals that people were buying for $10,000 a unit. Right. Right. And then on top of that, you didn't have as many people living in multifamily. Right. Like back then, it was kind of seen as it was kind of lowbrow to live in a multifamily apartment unit, right? And that's completely changed from 2010 to 2020 because now there's all these luxury apartments and all this stuff. So that's a long way of saying that in 2020 and the recency bias, everyone thought 08, 09, that's going to happen again. Well, it didn't happen because you had all these people bidding on deals and you still had financing. Right. Fast forward to kind of maybe what we saw as rates went up, a lot of people were going, oh my God, the market's going to crack and it's going to be, a big buying opportunity. Well, it certainly has been. I mean, when you go from 5 caps to 6 caps, that's pretty damn good, but you're not going to get 7 and 8 caps.
Well, and I think too, people just look at the price per door and whatever. Well, it's the NOIs have gone up so much that even a 6 or 7 cap, it's still the price per door is going to be higher than where we were.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
because of how much NOIs have gone up.
Your $45,000 door is now $100,000 a door, right? I remember when we got, when we met, anything over $100,000 is a door. Right. I mean, Springdale, was it 87.5 or?
Well, at that point, I remember we closed on that. No, it was like 90.
No, 93.4.
93. Yeah, it was in the 90s.
93, 94.
It's like $93,000 a unit. Or we closed on that. Like it was like in the news, like record-breaking price for 70s product or whatever. Yeah. And I'm just like, but long term, like it's just gonna and people are like, well, how would you pay a record price for that property and da da da? I'm like, and yes, we've had to put more in than we thought for CapEx. But I see where that NOI is at. I know what it's worth and what it's going to be worth. And I've seen some other comps lately, and so it's going to be a huge winner.
What's funny? I remember talking to you about it, And just like anybody, they get, there's always kind of a little buyer's remorse, right? And you had this kind of moment where you're like, oh man, I'm paying like a 5.4 cap for this. Now that sounds great.
Yeah.
Even today's world, that's not bad.
Yeah. For the size and whatnot.
Yeah. And rates went down and cap rates went down. And you're going to be obviously fine over the long term.
Yeah.
So, but you're right. You couldn't find that deal for under $100,000 a door now.
Oh, no. You can off market potentially. But,
sure.
If anything that's on market, no.
Yeah. But I guess circling back to kind of the distress out there that you were asking about. So it was overhyped. People thinking, oh my God, that we're going to get properties for pennies on the dollar, right? Because of the liquidity piece. I think also because even if somebody has been in distress and forced to sell, there's still so many buyers lining up to buy multifamily.
Yeah.
And so effectively, maybe the deal didn't go as well as they thought, and maybe that investor in worst case loses all their equity. But you're not going to have a property that goes from $100,000 a door to $20,000 a door,
right?
Just because there's a buyer there willing to pick it up at
100%
or something.
Yeah.
So, and I think so. It's really just pushed and forced transactions.
Yeah.
But not like crazy deals.
Right.
But it's interesting. I think for some of the deals that I've looked at, not necessarily, some have gone to market, some with us, some not, some haven't at all. The pattern I've learned or I've seen is that they tend to be folks that are outside of their core competency. Mm-hmm. So maybe they're building in a new market that they're not used to the dynamics. They're building a deal way bigger than they've ever built. They're building a different type of deal. Like maybe they've been an affordable developer and now they're building market rate for the first time. Well, the management is different for affordable than market rate. And then candidly, some of these folks, they've just held on too long. And there's kind of been honestly a level of delusion where they weren't willing to cut their losses earlier or get help, bring in third-party management, do some sort of JV structure to find a way out. Mm-hmm. So that's the two most common themes I've seen with people who really got into trouble.
Right. Makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting 2025. I also think what I've been saying for the last, year, 2 years now also is 2026, I think, is going to be a huge year of appreciation as far as rents, just because, again, you look at how much less is going to be coming online because construction, new starts being down, right? And so, we're still seeing some of that stuff get absorbed now because of record starts from, 2021, 2022, and some of those record start years, right? Yeah. But we're almost to the back end of that now, and with starts, a year and a half ago, starts were down 20 to 40% depending on the market. Yeah. Now you look at it, they're down from the high, they're down 40 to 80% depending on the market, right? Yeah. And so what that means for 2026 with less coming online, I'd like to think, and even in 2025, I think we'll start to see this. I think that you're going to see rents kind of spike up again. Is my guess. Now I don't know what that's going to do to the cap rates and whatnot. Who knows? But I feel like our rents, our NOI is going to grow quite a bit again here over the next 18, 24 months. So, and I should say same store, kind of NOI, like a property that we've already, any property that we bought is going to significantly grow NOI, but a property that we already kind of stabilized NOI, I still think that'll grow a lot again, just because of, again, the lack of supply coming online.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing in the multifamily investment space right now that everybody's feeling confident about. Yeah. And it's interesting. I'll send this chart to you sometime, but we had a research team compare the top 75 markets across the country, and they did kind of a year-over-year rent growth on a y-axis, and then on the x-axis they did a 5-year cumulative, right? And they took kind of your average, and you saw some of these hot markets like Austin, cumulative over the last 5 years only was 12% rent growth, when your average across all the markets was, I think, 18 to 20. Mm-hmm. But you hear Austin and you think, oh my God, it's, 1 year it might have 12% rent growth, but year over year, it's negative 12.
Right.
Because it got overbuilt.
100%. Yeah.
And so that's the great thing about the Midwest is that you just don't really have that as much.
Right.
And the reason being is that all the developers and the money in the investment firms, they go to the fast growing markets, and they try to time it, and they go to Tampa, they go to Nashville, they go to Austin. Yeah. And so you don't get that as much in the Midwest. You definitely don't get it in the secondary markets as much, you know? So I think for you and anyone investing with you or any of your mastermind folks who are doing kind of similar program, that is actually a huge risk management, because you're not going to have 500 units be built across the street and screw you up. You know? Right. I mean, I would be curious to ask you, how much have you really been affected by new construction?
I think that we've like when we have seen it's been very short, because like even the new construction that has happened, like Madison, for example, like it's absorbed really, really fast. Yeah. So like we might not be able to be like as competitive or get as high of a rate as we thought maybe for like a month and a half period. Yeah. But then after that, it just kind of picks.
That's your typical dip.
It just kind of So other than that, I mean, like 6 points over there in Milwaukee. I mean, Mandel kind of built kind of all around us and stuff. I think that gave us some problems too, but that's not the only problem that we've had there with the payroll, with just operations, operations and stuff. But yeah, so I mean, it's not like you said. It's not like, you know, I mean, there's places in Florida where you pick up a building and before you knew it, like again, at a metropolitan area, and you pick up a building and or heck, you just vacation to one of these places and you see within a 4-block area how many huge buildings are going up. I mean, I was just in Toronto in November for Taylor Swift concert, and the freaking amount of construction in Toronto right now was bonkers.
I didn't know that.
Every freaking block there is like a skyscraper like going up. I'm like, holy shit! Like stuff that like I hadn't seen in a long time. Like Toronto is blowing up, and it's like it's never stopped. There's cranes everywhere in Toronto. Funny. Most cranes I've seen in a long time.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I was in Austin for the F1 race back in October, and really cool city. But I'm walking down the city, and same sort of thing. Just tons of cranes, tons of construction jobs, and there's crews working on Sundays.
Crazy.
I mean, it's one thing to work on a Saturday, but Saturday and Sunday, right? That just tells you that that's how expensive their debt is. It costs it costs less to pay double overtime to have crews work on Sunday than to pay that debt.
Right. Yeah.
Which it's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
But I mean, I think it's gonna be an interesting couple of years, you know, and it's funny. You know, I feel like the apartment real estate, the apartment like talk or like trend is not what it was in 2019, 2020, 2021. Maybe going back to like 2018, you know, when it started to kind of pick up a lot there.
And how do you make that, just to clarify?
Bringing on new people into our program, for example. They bring up, is multifamily still even a good thing to get into? Never had that question, you know, prior to like, you know, early mid last year, right? And I'm like, if anything, like this, now's the time to get involved, because like if you can find a deal that works right now with the high rates where they're at, like when rates do come down, right? Even if it's just a little bit, you're gonna be in a good position. And even if they don't, with all the construction that has not started, with starts being down, what's going to happen over the next year and a half, if I'm right with this, is I think 2026, you're going to see, I think NOIs are going to go up again, which is going to drive prices up regardless. But then if you get any cap rate compression at all, on top of that, you're going to see an explosion in asset values again. And now you're going to have, you know, people, and I think that's going to bring more people back, because they're going to think, okay, like kind of what we're saying, if there's less construction, less competition, it could bring more buyers back in, which maybe, and if rates come down a little bit, it drives, you know, compresses cap rates more. And then the excuse again is going to go back to, well, now it's like, it's so expensive now. I'm like, more expensive than what? Right. Because like, well, what it was for you a year and a half ago when you're buying, like a year and a half, 2 years ago, right now, you're saying stuff was too expensive. Right. So like, and it's crazy, like again, over the last 12 years to see the ebb and the flow of all the different excuses of why people have to not buy real estate. Yeah. Because it just always, it's like a ping pong, just back and forth.
Yeah. I mean, you know, the best time to buy real estate was yesterday, 100%. Right? So second best time is now. You know, I think one thing that I think we've talked about before that's interesting is there's a famous hedge fund guy, Paul Tudor Jones, who said your analysis needs to match your time frame. And it's interesting. I've seen this business, real estate's generally a long-term game, right? Minimum 3 to 5 years if you're a kind of a flipper, value add flipper, or a developer. That's on the low end. You know, 10-year fund is maybe a little bit more common, but there's family offices that plan to hold for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Yeah. And so when your analysis of like you said, you can't control the market. If you buy in a bad market, it's most likely going to stay a bad market, or whatever that may be. And so, but what blows me away is how much people they just want to have something to talk about. So they focus on the last 6 months and what's going to happen in the next 6.
Yeah.
And they make decisions off of it. And the reality is this business of real estate, multifamily specifically, will do well over 5-10 years.
Right.
Just because it's a hedge against inflation. People need a place to live. And a lot of times people mismatch their analysis and their hold period. And I think people should kind of do that more. If they're going, okay, I'm going to hold this deal for 10 years, then don't worry about the construction being built across the street.
Right.
That'll absorb in 18 months.
Right.
And I think even if you look at Chicago's gotten a lot of flack over the last 5 years because of COVID, crime, whatever, taxes. But the people buying in Chicago right now have a 30, 40, 50-year hold period.
Right.
These are family offices that have billions of dollars. And they go, man, the fundamentals of Chicago are actually amazing. From incomes to diversification of the economy to infrastructure. You always have in fact, the age gap or the age cohort of 25 to 44 in Chicago population growth is like 3%, has averaged 3% over the last 5 years, which is a ton
for sure.
And that's because you tend to have Chicago's a really interesting market because of two things. One, it's a great, all the Big Ten feeds into Chicago, so you always have kind of this younger population coming up. But the other thing that's different is there's so many job opportunities there that you can build an entire 20+ year career and not leave Chicago.
Right.
If you are bouncing around and you go to Nashville and then you go to you can only move so much within Nashville.
Right.
Growing city, a lot of opportunity, but eventually you might have to go to Austin or Tampa or Denver or whatever. And so, I mean, these are obviously I'm from Chicago, so I talk a lot about it, but it's interesting perspective that some people don't realize, but it's what back to the analysis, it's what these long-term family offices see and why they buy and hold for 30 years. The other thing that's interesting too, two things is, you go buy something in Florida over the last 5 years, your insurance costs have 5x'd.
Right.
When maybe in the Midwest they've doubled.
Right.
The other thing would be, and then you don't have as many natural disasters. And then in Chicago, and it applies to Wisconsin too, but you have, billions of gallons of fresh water right in our backyard.
100%.
Which
at some point that's going to become a big issue.
And a lot of people looking 30, 50 years from now, they see that.
Yeah.
But most people like you and I aren't thinking about that.
I thought about that a lot.
I'm sure you have.
I've thought about that a lot. Like Wisconsin has a ton of space, and it's got a ton of fresh water.
Right.
Right. And I mean, when you look at Lake Michigan, Lake Superior, the Great Lakes and stuff, all those. I mean, at some point, that becomes a big resource that is going to be really sought after. I think.
Look at California. Look at Denver. The amount, it's dry and it's it's nuts.
Yeah.
And we won't have that problem at least for a long time.
Right.
I mean, you look at, I think Bill Gates has the most amount of farmland in the country because he believes in something to do with water. I don't know. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah. But I mean, it's just the land, the ability to make food, the water that could be underneath the ground. I mean, there's springs. I mean, I know guys that are sitting on some water in California that is way underground. That I don't know if it's because against the law right now that they can't. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Tap it basically.
Yeah, I don't know, but I know they're sitting on it.
That's interesting
because at some point. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a family office type group that.
Have you?
That's looking at that.
This just reminds me, it's totally off total tangent, but do you watch the show Landman?
Marshall Wilkinson on Instagram said something great about that, but it's the same creator as Yellowstone, right?
Yeah, Taylor Sheridan.
Yeah, it's kind of based in Texas and it's basically oil fields and stuff like that. No, I should check it out. It's HBO or where's that one?
Paramount
as well. Okay.
But it's an interesting show. I mean, it's not like a huge real estate show, but it's just kind of, I mean, you talk about drilling for water or springs, but obviously they're drilling for oil, but it's a really good show.
Yeah.
Billy Bob Thornton, and it's kind of a riot. It's a good business show.
I haven't checked it out yet, but I've heard a couple people in the business world say some really good things about it.
Yeah. But yeah, so Water's a big thing.
I think so. I think it becomes a big thing at some point. Joel, what do you got in your mind, man?
For a person who's in real estate, either starting out, at what point do they connect with a broker, and how do they go about that? How do they vet?
It's a good question.
It's a question I get all the time too.
Yeah, what is that process?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I could probably speak to a few things. You know, how you came into the picture, and how you did it right, and there's people who do it wrong.
Mm-hmm. How did I do it right?
How did you do it right?
Yeah.
This is interesting. Well, let me tell you how people do it wrong first.
Okay.
A couple ways. I think I've had people reach out in the kind of the weirdest ways. People who kind of come in and they're too big for their britches, and kind of act big, and you're kind of like, all right, something's off here.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I had one group come in, and they were trying to basically financially engineer the deals so that they were basically buying 100% leveraged. So they'd come in, they'd get 65, 70% loan on the deal, and then they would ask for seller financing of the remaining 30%, but they effectively, to the bank, they bought it as the bank didn't know that there was seller. I mean, it's basically fraud.
Yeah, right.
It's just like, wait, what?
Yeah.
So that's like an extreme part of it. I think people who, I think the one thing I would highly recommend not to do is call one of the bigger firms as someone who's never bought in the market before. Mm-hmm. Unless you have a warm lead or warm intro, don't call and say, hey, let us know if you got off-market deals. Because I'm going to take off-market deals like Springdale to you.
100%.
Because I've closed a deal with you before.
Right, yeah.
And I'm not going to take, like if you're a bigger firm, a national firm, you don't have an issue finding buyers.
Right.
Right? Especially in multifamily. So, and I think going back to kind of what you did right.
There's so many people that come to me that they're like, what? I got this big broker list. I'm going to start calling and see if they can build a relationship to do off-market deal. I'm like, they don't care about, they're getting paid on a transaction. Mm-hmm. So they don't really necessarily care. They care about relationship. You guys care about a relationship, but right. You're not just going to come in and get all these off-market deals that they have, because they're going to go to guys that they're going to take it to 2 or 3 or 4 guys that they've closed with before and say, hey guys, here's an opportunity I got. It's not listed. The guy just wants to close quick and whatever, and doesn't want to market it, and they're not going to. And so I just straight up tell people, don't do it. Don't
call brokers for off-market deals.
Yeah. Don't. So you're thanking me for that.
Yeah. Because I am.
Then now it's different. Where like I'll call you and say, hey, you got anything in the pipeline coming? Like because again, like you said, you're gonna go and bring those to guys like me that have closed those deals with you before. Mm-hmm. So that's different. But like to cold call a broker and say, hey, you have any off-market deals? Like they don't. It's just a waste of what I tell the people that come to me trying to learn how to do this. It's like a waste of your time.
Yeah.
Just like you're wasting the broker.
I mean, me and my team, we laughed about this like a month or 2 ago, and I think I even like commented on someone's LinkedIn saying the same thing. And I basically said it's like asking someone to sleep with you without going to dinner first.
Right.
right. We got to do a deal first before, it's like, give me your best deal.
That's like how you do the relationship. Like you don't just build like you do a deal, that's the relationship.
Yeah.
And then that's what brings them another off-market deal.
So, I mean, I think like to ask how you did it right, and I met you when you were already under due diligence, so I can't fully speak to it. But I think what you did do is you really committed to buying that deal, and you went through a lot of hoops to make that happen. You had the assumption, you had the supplemental, you were very committed to it. So I think there's something to be said for if you do go after a deal, just be very professional, great communication. Don't take forever to respond from the brokers or the seller or whatever it is, and you can have a level of transparency. I think on Springdale, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you maybe needed an extra 15 days. And
I think we did,
on due diligence.
And I can't remember why.
And you let me know 3, 4, 5 days in advance instead of waiting until the 9th hour and going, I need time. Yeah. And I mean, I've had.
Shit, I can't remember why that was. But we did for something. So many deals that I can't remember. Either. It's all like blurred together. But I do remember that.
Yeah, and I think. Oh wait, no, I was
I mean, but a lot of it is that communication part.
It's professionalism,
you know, and and I think too, like when I was starting, I was transparent too with people. I told them, hey, this is what I've done. And it wasn't like a lot. I mean, I just straight up told them. So like even before I bought a larger building, like people knew that maybe I only had 8 units and the storage units at the time, right, or whatever, and people just knew that I never kind of came in like lying. I just kind of told the truth and then just hustled to try to, make it happen. And that's the biggest thing too, is like what people don't realize is like when you go under contract, like when you want to close those deals, like when you start negotiating, you get an LOI, like you want to close those deals, not because of like, again, just because of all the relationships that are involved, right? I mean, to not close a deal is wasting everyone's time, and that's a good way to not. And
it's a small world, right? You can blow your reputation.
Yeah, like you said, you got 4 or 5 slots at each big city for these brokerage, right? And it is a small.
Yeah, it's small, right?
It's crazy how small real estate is.
And the other thing is the brokers know each other too. So and some brokers are more friendly than others, but we don't have a problem calling up someone from JLL or whatever it is and saying, hey, have you ever worked with this guy before? Yeah. Because I'm not going to waste my time on it. And so it's a small world. And then you have the debt side of it. You have a lot of debt contacts where you can say, hey, do you know this guy or not?
Yeah.
So I think just your professionalism, communication, commitment to the deal went a long way. And so it's kind of tough to get in, but I think when you get in, it's you're good. And I think to your point, it's like
well, and like you said though too, the cool thing is as well is like you don't. So now someone might say, well, I have to close a deal with every single broker to get on a broker. Like not every single broker, like you just said, all these brokers know each other.
Yeah.
So like I think I get a lot of calls from a lot of different brokers at these at these bigger firms. That
I bet after you closed Springdale, you probably got a bunch.
Just because again, whether they knew you or they saw what was out there or whatever. Like if they know you're a closer and do stuff, there's a better opportunity for that. Plus, then if you also have a portfolio, like they're wanting to sell stuff for you too when you want to sell, so they're going to try to bring you stuff. Right.
Well, I mean,
you have to have something potentially that you can add to the pot of bring some value to them as well.
Right.
To the table to get a shot at that, and that's why I'm like, guys, stop wasting your time doing that. Like, why are you doing that? That's not a part. It's not a part of our. It's a part of it once you get to this point. Then it's a part of it.
Right. Yeah.
Like before that, like it really, it's. Could you find a diamond somehow, some way? Absolutely, you could. But if that's the only thing you're going to focus on, you're focused on the wrong thing.
Yeah. Now, here's one thing that this would be interesting to talk to you about that's related to that, is sometimes I think there might be an arbitrage, and actually Fund 3 is a perfect example. You found it on MLS, and they can sell with a national firm. So there's that. There's sometimes you have like the local, residential firm, like KW, but they're selling something commercial. Yeah. And that's probably someone that somebody could call up and say, hey, do you have
a lot of times, I think so, yeah.
And then occasionally that group that could maybe does.
Because like there's a lot of times, yes. So like if it's a broker that's a local broker, not like an investment sales at Cushman or Walker Dunlop or JLL or Newmar or all those big ones. Yes, I would say local. But even then, I think sometimes it's tough. Sometimes because like when those types of people even stumble across something, they already typically have relationships that they've closed something with them usually.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So is that a better alternative than again calling these guys at the bigger firms? I think yes, but I still think that to some level a lot of them have a lot. Like the one that was on MLS, like that wasn't off market. That was publicly out there. Like people just didn't touch it because it was poorly in my opinion, it was poorly packaged and marketed.
Right.
So.
But that was interesting
because even like there's stuff there are things that like will hit the MLS like in the area where like we all own properties, like because we'll still pick up like an 8 unit right across from where we already own property whatever, or like right in the same area where it's been on the market. I'll get the notification right away and I'll call and they'll be like, nope, already sold it.
Right.
So what does that tell me? Like they took it to market because that's what they had to do to get their commission with how that whole thing's set up or whatever, and then they already had a relationship though that kind of already had been got the lead on that.
So that's interesting though because there's kind of a different mindset when you're in the residential space, because it's really about how fast can I sell a home.
Right.
Because usually they're talking about homes or maybe a duplex, right? When in investment sales, it's how competitive a process can we create? Right. How many offers can we bring to the table? How can we sell the story on the upside? So to that point, like that mentality with that sort of broker is how do I have the relationship with someone to buy this? Right. When for us nationally, it's like, I mean, yes, I have the relationships. Like I know you might be interested in XYZ deal because we worked, but I also know there's going to be, probably 10 to 20 offers on any given deal. Right. So yeah, there is some arbitrage there. Right.
Right. So what other you got? Do you have any other questions? I know you
the only other one was just for you personally. What's your next kind of business / personal evolution? Where are you wanting to go? What's kind of that next level?
Yeah. So my business partner Jack and I, who obviously you've worked with on some deals too. So our background was we both kind of cut our teeth in Southeast Wisconsin. We both worked as juniors for senior brokers, and they kind of said, and this is typically how your evolution of a broker shop will go, is they'll send you to a secondary or tertiary market and say, hey, go call on owners there and try to dig up some business. And so both of us were at different firms, and we did a lot. We both ended up building a track record in Madison, Milwaukee, Kenosha. And so a year and a half ago, we kind of connected and came together and said, hey, let's start, instead of doing the whole junior-senior dynamic, let's do our own thing. So we came together a year and a half ago, and it's been really great. We've been at it. So we're focused we live in Chicago, but we really do anything within 3 to 5 hours of there. So I'd say most of our deals and momentum is Chicago and Southeast Wisconsin. We've actually done a decent amount in Northern Indiana. We've been to Western Michigan. I mentioned I've done some deals there. But really, I think it's kind of continue to grow the business. I mean, as a broker, and I think it applies to anybody in commercial real estate, is it's you don't get rich quick. You just stay in the game, right? And it's a long-term play, and you build relationships and hope that down the road it turns into a deal or a sale. And so I do feel like we're kind of both at this point in our career, we're in our young 30s where we got a lot of runway ahead of us. So the goal would just to be, take more market share as broker, do more deals, and be one of the kind of household names in all the markets we cover. So.
Well, I think the interesting thing is, I know there's a boutique brokerage here in this area, and he's probably been doing it, I don't know, 30, 40 years, whatever.
Yeah, I think I know who you're talking about.
Having conversations with him, he's like, yeah, I've sold that building 7 times.
Yeah.
Right? Like I've been selling that building since it was $5,000 per unit, and now it's $120,000 a unit, whatever. And it's just like, wild. It's crazy, right? So, I mean, so like you said, it's a lot about a relationship. Like what we've kind of been talking about, so much was just relationship based.
Yeah.
And like you think about the commission that then off that one building. It's like, I mean, let alone how many buildings he's sold 2 times, 3 times, 4 times. I mean, if he's got a building he's sold that many, more than a half dozen times, right?
Yeah.
But that's like what you're talking about is like when you kind of build that relationship and you get in the game and you become known for what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like you'll find people that you'll work with, and then like if you sold somebody the building, they might end up. I mean, we got some. We got that. You've been a part of 3 of ours. Like you might get those, right? So like when it comes to and then you've sold it. Been a part of that twice, right?
Right.
And so.
Yeah, the round trip.
Right, the round trip. Yeah. So that's like every broker's dream is to start getting round trips.
Totally,
right?
Man. It's I've hired at a point in my career like a business coach, and he talks about leverage in the business, and you start off making 50 cold calls a day for one meeting or even one good conversation. And then the longer you're in the business, then it's 25 calls, then it's 10 calls for one good conversation. Then it eventually becomes 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 good calls. You call this person, you have a good conversation about a potential deal.
Yeah. Well, did you have more on that?
No, go ahead.
Well, what I was thinking too, while you're saying that, and while we're talking about the relationship thing, is and going back to where I'm telling people like, look, don't call Walker & Dunlop brokers and try to be like, hey, got any off market? Don't call JLL. Don't call Cushman. Don't do it, right? Yeah. But it's also funny because like on the other side, right now the table turns, and I get brokers all the time calling me, "Hey, you want to sell this deal? I see you got some debt expiring, da da da." And I'm like, why don't you bring me an off market deal, and then when I go to sell that one, I'll bring it to you, right? Why would like because like in my mind, I'm like some of these I'm going to give you an opportunity because you're the one that brought them to us, right? And so that's a way that there's value there too of like, well, bring me a deal, and when I look to sell that one, then maybe you can have it at that point.
Right.
Doesn't mean you automatically get it. I'll have 2 or 3 broker opinion values, but like the person that brought that one is going to have the upper the first shot to do it.
And that's where like going to leverage point where the people who've been doing it for 15, 20 years, I would say a handful of things really play into their favor. One of them is maybe there's a lot of favors that they've done that they're kind of owed the return on. Yeah. Right. So that's part of it. And it's not always an off market deal. Sometimes there's someone's neck and neck. And they push it one person's way. Yeah. And because I've lost deals for the same reason. Right. We'll pitch a deal and somebody goes, hey, it's not even might not even be the person. It might be their business partner. Hey, my business partner owes the other firm a favor. And so, and
I don't know for sure if that's happened for you now when I've been buying, but I'm pretty sure it's happened at least 2 or 3 times.
What's that? What?
Where, like what you said, where I've got a lot of transactions with somebody, and then I'm the buying side working with them, and it's really close to another company, and they vouch for me because of the book of business that I've, the amount of business that we've done together in the past 3, 4, 5,
well,
6 years.
like that happened on Springdale. Right. Like you were neck and neck with the other group, and it was...
Other group was a big group, right?
It's a big group.
Yeah.
And
like, oh shit, I'm going against these guys.
And it was, it's funny, I don't know if I ever told you this, but when they came in and did their unit walks, or just their tour, they brought like 5 or 6 people. Yeah. And the seller was kind of like, he was like, I don't know, man. I just feel like they're going to look at this property with a fine-tooth comb, and they're going to retrade, and they're going to do all this stuff.
We should have retrade. Both of us should have retrade.
But it still worked out.
It still worked out. For sure. It's going to work out, yeah.
But then, the other thing that helped is you had some 1031 money. Yeah. So you guys were at the same spot from a price standpoint. And I think this is interesting for anyone listening to your investors, right? Like, you were maybe the smaller group.
By a lot.
Smaller group by a lot. Yeah, I think at that time they probably had 3,000 to 5,000 units all in the Milwaukee
area. And I didn't know
area.
who it was during, but
now you know. So you were a 10th their size, right? And but the advantage was really you only had like I think $1 million of 1031 money, but the seller literally said like, well, let's go with this guy. Well, the 1031's hot and he wants to commit, and whatever doesn't work out, there's the other group. And then it certainly pushed it. Like, let's go with Justin. Like we've sold with him before, and I think in ways the relationship does make a difference. Like, you get to know somebody. We have a rapport. It's like, I want to see Justin win.
Right. Yeah. Springdale's one, man. If I would have bought that by myself, that would have been one that I like never want to sell. It's such a good location, and just like where we're at there. So it'll be a good.
That was an interesting deal because he.
Man, the boiler system sucked. Just so much shit that I like. Again, like my earlier days buying bigger deals were just like overlooked a lot of stuff, but just rolled with it.
Well, that was an interesting
all new
deal.
Boilers now. Got all new windows. Got the properties. Got a lot of new stuff.
You put a lot of capex into it. Yeah. That was an interesting deal because he was open to selling, but he wouldn't give out his financial statement. Right. His T12. Yeah. He only gave out a rent roll. Yep. And you were creative enough to say, well, I can figure it out.
Yeah. Anyone should be able to. If you really know what you're doing, you should be able to. And like the only thing that I got wrong there really was, okay, I should have doubled how much I was planning for CapEx. Sure. And even if I would have done that, our returns on paper still would have been, in my mind, it would have been a no-brainer to do it. But I mean, it's crazy when you look at where we've come on that deal.
Yeah. That was kind of my first real deal though. That I personally Actually, I don't think I've even told you this story. Maybe I have, but
it makes sense because that was only 6 months after, or not even really.
If I started in March of 2019,
we closed that November 4th.
November 4th.
So, you remember that too?
Hell yeah, I remember that day.
I remember November 4th, 2019.
And so the funny thing about that though is I had gotten introduced to him, and somebody had said, "Hey, he might be willing to sell." And I couldn't get a meeting with him. He was like, no. I was like, can I come by and let's talk? And, every broker wants a listing because it's not only a better process usually, but it's also a marketing thing, right? More people see your name and stuff. But he's like, he wouldn't even take a meeting, and he was kind of a jerk, to be honest. And so,
I got no comment on it.
Yeah. And I went to my senior partners at the time, and I said, let me just go to a handful of people, 5-10 people, and just see what we can pull up. And they originally told me no. They said, don't waste your time on it.
Oh, really?
And then about a month went by, and I started out, like a lot of I don't know this. I think this has shifted over time, but I was 100% commission only. And you don't, typically brokers don't do deals for 12 to 18 months. And so I'm sitting there like, I need.
You probably didn't do anything off the 96 East deal because you came in.
No, I came in too late for that. And so I was like, I need to eat. I need to close the deal. And so like a month after they told me no, I was like, I'm gonna do this. Just let me do it. And they're like, fine. And so I probably went to like 30 groups.
Really?
But a lot of people were turned off because he didn't have financials.
Yeah.
Obviously, because we met from 96 East and closed, and had a rapport.
Yeah.
I was excited to bring it to you. And then, I don't know, there was probably 5 or 6 offers, and 3 were competitive.
Yeah.
But, after closing that deal, my senior partner, Todd, he was like, there was probably a 5% chance that actually was closed.
Yeah.
And looking back at it now that I've been in the business for a while, I'm like, yep, that checks out.
Right. Yeah.
So,
but I mean that, I think the numbers that really matter the most to me when I'm looking at like seller's books and stuff, I mean, the utility numbers are big. Cause I mean, as far as like management fee, well, I know my management fee. As far as a payroll, I know what I'm going to have to payroll it. Like, as far as my repairs and maintenance, I mean, if we CapEx, I mean, I'm going to generally know about where I should be as long as I have CapEx dollars. And that one is a little bit different because I was still learning how to do it. But like, that's the big ones, the utilities. Because, okay, who's paying the utilities? How much are the utilities? Because certain buildings can be way less efficient. Certain buildings can be way more efficient. All that stuff. Those are the big ones. So, I mean, because a lot of times, like, I don't even take into account, like, when I see, especially off-market type stuff, but when I see, a seller's repairs and maintenance number, I'm like, well, there's probably some CapEx in there that they didn't actually truly CapEx, and I don't know. I mean, so and also there's sometimes where like they don't take care of the property at all, and I know that with our $1 million CapEx plan, a lot of that R&M repairs and maintenance is not going to be there a year after that because it's going to be like a lot newer.
Totally.
Whereas someone really runs into the ground, they might have a significant amount of repairs and maintenance. Yeah, because of that, and we see that all the time when we put like the first year, 2 years that we buy a deal, repairs and maintenance, utilities, everything is higher. Well, we get more utility efficient. Our utilities will drop 30 or 40% sometimes. Yeah. I mean, like Springdale.
Well, you did the green system, right, with the toilets and stuff. Didn't you do that, or did he do it before you?
I think he bullshitted. He bullshitted everything. I'm not mad at him. Whatever.
It worked out for you. Yeah.
But so I mean, we did the all new LEDs throughout the entire building. We did the new boilers. We've done the new windows and patio doors. I mean that. Yeah. So like again, you look at like our natural gas, our electricity costs there are less now than they were when we first bought it. Because, and even with the inflation, right? And so same thing, repairs and maintenance. We'll see the same thing. Wild. What's that?
That is pretty wild. That's less. Even
now water's higher because I don't know why water. Yeah, water we haven't been able to figure out over there. I think we gotta look into that a little bit more. But like repairs and maintenance, I mean, again, after we go in and we're remodeling and we remodel units, and even if it's partially or fully or whatever, I mean, there's just on the back end of that, there's a lot less repairs and maintenance than what someone else who doesn't put a lot of money back in their properties, a lot of CapEx back in their properties.
Yeah. And that's how we'll look at it too when we're valuing a property, right? If we're factoring in $2-3 million of CapEx, then all right, we can bring your R&M down for the first few years.
Which is huge because then again you take R&M down, right? You take utilities down. What happens in my NOI? It goes up. Plus, if we're increasing rents, right now as your NOI goes up, for every dollar of NOI is about, depending on the cap rate, 15 to $20 of value to the building, right? So if I can, every dollar and I've gotten my entire team to understand this, like every dollar that we can save on utility that drops now to our bottom line is $15 to $20 of property value. Yeah. Well, that 15 to 20, if it's $20 of property value, I can go out and get a loan again against that and get another $10 of loan.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Proceeds.
So so I can get a second mortgage or whatever to then pull my equity back out and go to the next project.
Yeah.
So it's a value, it's cash flow, it's value, it's a lot of different ways to look at it.
One thing that I wanted to make sure we talked about today that's interesting, and it's kind of a kudos to you, but just in general for anybody investing or operating. So I have a good friend and client who is they're an equity firm, right? So they do these JVs with someone like yourself, a sponsor, and they'll write, $3 to $20 million checks. And they were telling me, there's really a question of how much is it the deal, how much is the success attributed to the deal itself, and how much is the operator or the jockey, right? Like you mentioned earlier, like if you buy a good deal in a bad neighborhood, you can't change it's a bad neighborhood, right? Yeah. And I think with apartments and commercial in general, everyone talks about location, and that is super important. Don't get me wrong, but the operator is still a huge component of it, especially if you're going to be a more operationally intensive business plan, like a value add or construction, for example. So this equity, this capital group who invests and they have 15, 20 different sponsors they work with. And so they went through an exercise where they basically ranked all of their sponsors. Who's the easiest to work with? Who's the best at executing their business? Who do we trust when they say this is what's going on? Everything, right? They just ranked them. And what's wild and kind of funny is the group they ranked at the top of their list and the group they put at the bottom had the exact same business plan. Value add, similar markets, similar size deals. And I think that's really a testament to the jockey matters
for sure,
and the operator matters.
100%. I would say if you had to put a percentage to it, as you said it, I was thinking it's probably 90-10 operator. That's what I think, or 80-20. Because again, like the only other thing I think is that location thing. But I think so many things are just operational that
Well, and I think also too, like, I don't know, we can get into this. It's been wild how in 2021, and you can touch on it more, but there was a ton of capital raised for multifamily, right? Like post-COVID, all this inflation, people getting, bonuses and stock market gains and all this stuff. And then, the kind of just advertising that picked up for syndications had just skyrocketed in 21 and 2. And so a lot of people put their money into multifamily or whatever, just real estate syndications in general. And it kind of goes to the point of people see a deal and they go, oh, those are the returns that'll happen. But they really don't know who they're investing with.
Right.
Yeah. And it's like, I do think over the next 5 years, there will be more of I actually think like back in the day when you had like stock advisors that would help you pick stocks. I think there might be people who do that, but for the help you pick syndications to invest in.
Yeah.
Because I think enough people have gotten burned, but like it's still a good asset.
Well, especially with how you can do the marketing if your fund's set up the right way and whatnot. Right. I mean, if you can market and all that stuff, I can see that happening.
Right. So I think it'll be an interesting transition where there will be more of a vetting process.
A lot of people are going to be out of the game this time around.
Sponsors like yourself, yeah.
Well, you think there's gonna be a lot of people that just they did the deal for the acquisition fee or whatever, and then didn't operate it.
They wanted to scale, or
didn't operate it, and got caught in the wrong thing and fell apart and blew up in their face. And I think so there's a lot of people I think they're gonna be done.
I think like if I'm personally gonna invest in anything, or have a family member or a friend who wants to invest in anything, it's really important to delineate between are you investing with an operator or a capital raiser.
100%.
Because there's plenty of capital raisers out there who aren't good operators. And if they're a capital raiser, fine, but make sure they have a great operational team.
100%, yeah.
And because I think that's also what I've seen gone sideways. Like between 2019 and 2024, 25, I've seen some people just grow massively. And so they were really good at raising capital. But like just like any business, you scale too fast. The attention to detail goes to shit.
Yeah. So
that's a big thing.
Or there were some people that, I don't know, I think there were some people that didn't think they made it seem like they were going to be on the detail, but they weren't actually on the detail because they just thought the prices were going to keep going like this and they'd be fine. They could sell it 3 years no matter what for more than what they bought it for or whatever.
Well, from 2010 to 2020 when you had nothing but appreciation.
Right.
The idea, like I said, recency bias, right?
Right.
Everyone just thinks, everything, it's all going to be good. It's all going to go up. And I never feel good like looking at a deal personally about betting on things you can't control, like rent growth.
Right.
You know, that's like where the real risk is. If somebody has an outsized rent growth and they're
that's why I love just the assets that, you know, in the area where the rents are already under the current market rents and they're stuck in like rents that are 15 years old. Like that's why I love that's so much what we picked up.
Yeah. I mean, like 96 East, like when we were underwriting it and came to that, you know, 4.75 or $5 million value, whatever we thought it was, we were just going, oh, here's rents today, and we're going to grow them 3 to 5% in year one and 3% after that.
Which makes sense though, because I mean, like back then though, there weren't a lot of people buying on the future. I mean, you know what I mean? Like things kind of changed there in 2020, 2021 too, where people were like underwriting at what the market value was. You know what I mean? It's like they were almost paying. I mean, you remember this?
Yeah, year one.
They were paying if the property's currently worth $10 million right now, but I know if I do my thing to it, it could be worth $15 million. There was some people I would just start paying $12 to $12.5 million for it right now.
Yeah,
we weren't really doing that.
Sure.
Right, and then so they were already basically paying the seller for some of that upside already that wasn't even there, right? Because they know that there was still some left. And so I think that's also what got some of the people tripped up a little bit too.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, you can imagine.
And there's still a lot of people that won that doing that too. But there's people that couldn't operate or whatever that, you know, they took a double whooping.
You can imagine the people in the Southeast who were, when there was, you know, double digit rent growth, and they're underwriting 3 years of double digit rent growth.
Right.
And then like Austin's a perfect example, right? All of a sudden you have negative double digit rent growth.
But it's like to win some of those deals, I think the people had to do that.
That's what I'm saying.
That's the problem.
Right. That's where people really got
Right.
screwed.
Yeah.
And kind of back to the Midwest theme, like that's why, fortunately, like one of the great things about investing here is that you're never going to be it's steady Eddie.
Yeah.
Right. It's the tortoise and the hare. You're never going to be wildly over, bought.
Yeah. Now I showed double digit rent growth year one because the rents were 20% under market.
But that's also why in a competitive situation, why you'd be able to be the buyer.
But then year two, you know, and technically though I wouldn't bump that up until year two. I did the bump up, right? But then year three I'm back to like that 2.5 to 4%.
Yeah.
Right. Not another year of 20 or not another year of like 9 or 8. I never did that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that did.
So they didn't account for all the new construction in 21.
Usually I'm way under. It's rare that I'm like, by the time we hit, there's sometimes like my year 2 or year 3 revenue numbers are behind what I projected. Mm-hmm. Usually by the time we hit year 5,
you're there.
Like we're usually well beyond it.
Yeah.
Like well beyond my, like the initial projection for that year 5.
Yeah.
Because again, after I have the big bump, but then after that it's 3%, or whatever.
So you get to it, whether you get to it in year 3 or year 5, like as long as you get there probably by year 5, right? Or, by the time you sell, but yeah.
So cool, man. Well, yeah, I appreciate you. I don't know if you have anything else to add, or Joel, if you have anything, but yeah, man, I appreciate you getting up here to talk shop a little bit, and yeah, it'd be nice to maybe do this again in like a year or so, and see if we can kind of go through some of the things we were talking about and see what's
changed.
Yeah, what's kind of changed, and see if we were kind of on with anything.
I will say one thing.
You want any projections you want to make between now and then?
Well, this will be.
I already threw a couple out there with what I think is going to happen in 2025, 2026.
This will be a bigger year than last year for sure. But for us,
just transactional volume.
Yeah, I mean. We've got a few deals under contract or close to contract, so those should close in the next few months. Yeah. And so that's always already a good start. We've underwritten some 9-figure deals in Chicago, some towers.
Damn.
And I think we're going to get one, which is wild.
Sweet.
We're really
you got to call me if you do, because I at least just want to come tour it.
Yeah.
See it.
Come down, man. It's a big tower. That would be big. And I think what we were talking about earlier is, in this business, deals bring more deals, whether you're on the buy side or sell side or the buy side. Mm-hmm. So if we can sell a $110 million deal in the city, we can sell a $100 million deal in the suburbs, or a $80 million deal.
Yeah, I mean the marketing and the face recognition and name recognition that would bring you would be huge.
Yeah. So that's a knock on wood, but I think we'll find out in the next couple of weeks. And like I said earlier, I think there's going to be a lot more transactions. We were really busy leading up to the holidays. Just a lot of people who are looking at their 2025 business plan, who didn't really sell in 23, didn't sell in 24, and finally are recycling capital. So I think, like, you know, you were talking about like the round trip thing. That's like a broker's dream. Yeah. What's interesting, and I guess I'm sharing this for maybe someone who's thinking about being a broker or just kind of curious about the industry in general. You know, we get paid on transactions, and the transaction volume in Wisconsin is a lot less than Chicago, which is less than, you know, like Miami, right? Because what happens is, or maybe Nashville is a good example. The same deal will sell 2 or 3 times in Nashville in 3 years, but in Chicago, well, not Chicago, Wisconsin, that deal will sell twice in 30 years. Right. You know what I mean? And if you get paid on transactions, you want to be on a very transactional market. And so how that happens and why that happens is when you have a ton of rent growth in a market, once these funds hit a pretty good return, they're like, hey, let's take our win and let's get out.
It's just a straight number game.
Yeah.
They can hit it.
Yeah. And because they want to put a win on the board, it helps them raise more money, helps them scale. Yeah. So like if someone's sitting here listening to this and they go, I want to be a broker, and they're just starting off, I would say go to an Austin, go to a Tampa, a Nashville, a Denver, even Arizona. I mean, some of these. The other thing you got to think about is how competitive those markets are. Like Chicago's a very well brokered market because it's been a big major market for a long time. Yeah. But like the people who really crush it in the brokerage world are the guys who went to Tampa 15 years ago, right? And nobody was there, right? And now they've been in the game for 5, 10 years, 15 years. And they're the people, you know. And new guy tries to come in, and it's like, oh, well, these guys have been selling deals for 15 years.
Jacksonville,
right?
Yeah,
right. So, anyways, that's my.
Well, I think too, like, you know, just going back to the relationship thing again. You know, I remember when we first met, the spring of 2019. You brought that deal, and it's like now it's like I know a lot of the same people that you know, just because like you can tell how hard you've been out there grinding with your name and whatnot because of like different insurance brokers and whatever. But it's like or just like attorneys that know, you know, and so you can tell like that you've been working hard, just, you know, trying to get out there, and you've been making a lot of calls and whatnot because. You know, and I mean, maybe it's through some of my deals too, and some of, you know, they saw your name on some of my deals or whatever. But I mean, it's just like, you know, I think again, like we were talking about before, the real estate world, it is a lot smaller of a world than people realize. Very small. So anyway.
Well, one thing I've been thinking about a lot this past year is it's really just. Let me think about this. This will be interesting because you've been in sales roles too. And I think on one end of the spectrum, you have very transactional sales, right? Like the most extreme version is the guy who's coming up to your door selling you. Yeah. You know, who's that famous guy who was selling like the stuff that he'd like spray on your front porch and he'd wipe it off? Have you seen that guy? No. You know what I'm talking about. Pretty funny YouTube video. But anyways, very transactional, right? There's not a lot of trust that needs to be created in that. It's just, hey, is this a good product? It's $20. I'll buy it. If it doesn't work out, I'm out $20, right? And then on the other end of the spectrum, you got the higher ticket sales item it is, whether it's a $1 million to $10 million home or a $1 million car or a boat, or obviously a $50 million building, $10 million building. The more of a complex transaction it is, the more trust and relationship 100%, is involved. Yeah. And when I think about trust, and I'm curious if you have any thoughts or feedback on this. At least in our business, I think it comes down to like 3 basic things. It's one, can they do the job, right? Are they competent? And that'll be justified with, like I said, deals bring more deals. If this guy sold a similar deal down the street, he could probably sell my deal. Mm-hmm. Like just simple. Mm-hmm. And then what's their analysis? Does it make sense, right? So there's that. And then there's, you know, does this person understand me and my position on this, right? Do they understand why this is important to me? Like, because you wouldn't want someone to sell your deal that they just don't show how into it they are, right? You're a competitive guy. You want someone to be like, for sure, hell yeah, we're going to put everything we have into this listing, right? Yeah. So that's a value that you have, right? Yep. So do you? Well, I think I'm kind of touching on 2 things. One, like, does this person share the values that I have? Mm-hmm. Will I trust him to do the right thing? Yeah. And not just let this sit on his website. 100%. So that's one of them. And then, does this person understand me? Yep. Right? Because that's like, you know, I think there's been studies done on this too, is there's actually a lot more trust created from listening than from talking.
I would agree. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, I think all that makes sense.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, I don't have much to add to it, but yeah, no, yeah. I think that's what it boils down to. I mean, yeah, I definitely wouldn't want to work with someone who's just going to throw it on their website, right? Like I want them to throw it on their website, but then also be calling all the firms and whatnot that they've got contacts with that they've worked with and whatever to be able to sell the building, right?
Yeah.
You want someone that's going to be amped up, that's going to be hungry for it, and that's why too, like it's kind of funny too. It's got to be a right fit from a standpoint of like size, right? So there's another deal that you kind of gave us a BOV on. That was part of the reason I didn't go with you guys on that one, because I'm just like, I don't know, is it the right size? Like it was the sizing thing. I'm like,
totally.
Is it? Because it was kind of a borderline.
And we openly told you that. We said, hey, like we'd love to sell a deal for you, but we might not be the best choice.
Yeah, and it was kind of a borderline type thing. So I went somewhere else with that one, right? So yeah, I think everything that you said, 100% spot on.
And with that, like that's another thing in our business too, is it's such a long-term, time frame. Like, people do their brokers for life or at least 20 years. And I'd rather not get the listing there to build that trust with you.
Yeah.
And maybe on the next opportunity or one of the opportunities down the road, you say, okay, he did the right thing there. So maybe, I trust him here. But, the worst thing and what kind of can suck in this business as a broker, and this is how some people go out of business as brokers, is they overpromise, underdeliver too much. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times a seller will just they'll get 3 BOVs.
Yeah.
And they'll just go with the broker who tells them it's worth the most.
Yeah.
And
I've been guilty of that before.
And it's tough too, because
and then there's times where it wasn't right.
And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't.
Right.
But I think for us, the last thing that I would want, just because we're young, is to say, hey, we think it's worth $50 million just to get the listing, and it's maybe the market
offer
goes,
you get is 42.
Maybe maybe that's actually happened, right? Because at the same time the market went the opposite way, and there was all these other things that came up. But that's how people, that's how brokers end up never getting business from the same 100%. Person. And then you've got that guy who sold the same business or the same building 5 times, or you've got brokers who are like, they have clients who are like, I'm only going to sell through 100%. Brad or whoever it is, So anyways.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Awesome. Well, guys, appreciate you tuning in and listening. Brad, thanks for getting up here and being on. And
absolutely,
like I said, I think we'll do this a year from now, and I'll go back and listen to it at that point again and see what we kind of said in here and see how much things change and whatnot.
Absolutely.
So, awesome.
You'll be at 4,000 units. And,
I'm telling you, there's an explosion coming at some point. I just don't know when it's coming, but it's going to come. So
awesome, man. Thank you for having me.
And everyone around here knows when it rains, it pours. So we're going to hopefully double it up.
That's for sure, man.
All right, guys. Thanks. See ya.